The return from the springs that evening, everyone gathered at the old village chief's house for a big dinner. The villagers, treating it like New Year's, had slaughtered chickens and pigs, showing up with armfuls of fresh ingredients. Sunny came too, bringing Zhang Lily, Chun Erwa, and a whole flock of kids from the Hope School with him. As the fires were being lit, the younger kids, blissfully ignorant of the danger, started clamoring to have the fairy sister Claire cook for them. Chun Erwa, whose eyes still twitched with trauma from the last time he'd sampled one of Chef Sterling's cookies, threw himself in front of them in a desperate attempt to save their lives. In the end, Leo and Sun E were elected to help with the cooking. Working in the village chief's kitchen, the two of them fell into a smooth, practiced rhythm, building on the experience from their last big group meal. You wash the vegetables, I'll scrub the pot. As they bustled around the stove, Leo took a bundle of herbs from Sun E and said, almost as an afterthought, "Hey, if you ever run into any trouble down the line, remember to give me a call." Sun E just laughed heartily. "Will do." To the volunteer teacher from Pending Village's Hope School, it was just a kind, polite gesture. He had no way of knowing. He couldn't possibly understand the immense weight, the invaluable promise, held within that seemingly ordinary offer from a college student. 7 in the evening. The moon climbed over the treetops, and the village chief's courtyard was a blaze of light, filled with the roar of voices and laughter. Dinner was officially served. Amid the cheerful chaos, everyone dug in, their mouths full of fragrant, delicious food. They showered the two chefs with praise. After the first round of eating, the calls for drinks began. The enthusiastic villagers of Pending grabbed large bowls, filled them with liquor, and descended upon the group of college students. They had once admired the students for their knowledge, but after the night of the flash flood, that admiration had been forged into the bond of people who had faced death together. It was a deeper connection now, one of acceptance and closeness. The villagers were full of spirit, and Leo's group was more than ready to match it. Marco and Leon rolled up their sleeves and shot to their feet. Let's go, let's go. Nobody's leaving sober tonight. Even the girls put forth their champions, the dynamic duo of Quinn Liu and Lily Liu. Quinn planted a foot on a bench, radiating bravado. "Tonight, you're all going to see what a real woman can do." Beside her, Lily, the department's elegant girl, simply smiled demurely and raised her glass. "If it's beer, I can drink a little bit too." The table erupted in a clatter of glasses and a symphony of drinking games. Cheers and jeers echoed into the night sky over Spirit Springs Mountain. After 3 rounds, the village chief, already flushed and swaying, staggered to his feet again, his spirit undimmed. He raised his bowl to Leo. "Leo, my boy, let's you and me have one. In all my years, I've never seen a young man with as much courage as you." Leo smiled, stood, and clinked his glass against the chief's bowl, draining it in one go. The old man shook his head to clear it, refilled his bowl, and turned to Claire, who was sitting beside Leo. "Miss Sterling, you and me too." Claire smiled and rose gracefully, without a hint of hesitation. "All right, to you." The old chief looked at the stunningly beautiful girl before him, and his mind drifted back to that night of torrential rain. The image of her standing alone at the foot of the mountain, resolutely walking toward that Maybach in a downpour, was still burned into his memory. His thoughts returned to the present. He looked at Claire and let out a heartfelt sigh of admiration. "Holy hell, in all my life, I've never seen a girl as badass as you." Their glasses met. The table erupted in another round of cheers. As the drinking wound down and spirits remained high, someone called for a talent show to keep the party going. Chinerwa, Zhang Lily, and a few of the other kids volunteered to sing. Lily Liu, who happened to have brought her keyboard, provided the accompaniment, earning a thunderous round of applause. Reasonable, who had been experimentally fed 2 chopsticks worth of beer by Jade, drunkenly flapped around the courtyard, serving as the backup dancer. The village chief got into the spirit of it, too. "Hey, I can play a little something," he boomed. "Wife, bring me my swana. I'll play a tune for everyone." He was just about to heave himself up when several villagers grabbed him and pushed him back down onto his bench. "Chief, let's not. This isn't a wedding or a funeral." The atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter and applause. In the midst of the joyful noise, Anna pulled up a small stool and scooted next to Leo. She'd only heard bits and pieces about the flash flood from Leo and the others before. But listening to the vivid, dramatic retelling from the villagers and the kids today, she was stunned to learn just how terrifying that night had been. After the shock wore off, a deep sense of awe remained. "Leo, what kind of good karma did you rack up in your past life to land a sister-in-law like her?" Leo chuckled. "Well, in my past life, I did die for her." Anna rolled her eyes. "Yeah, right. What Were you the hero in some rom-com? Did you push her out of the way of a speeding truck or something? It was just an offhand joke, but was enough to sober Leo up instantly. He stared at his cousin as if she were some kind of psychic. You, my dear Annie Cakes, you weren't reborn too, were you? Did you get a copy of the script? After her quip, Anna fell silent for a moment. Then, she spoke again, her voice softer. Leo, you and Claire, you have to make it work. Seeing you two together is the only thing that makes me believe in love again. Leo paused, his gaze drifting to where Claire was being pulled into a makeshift dance circle by Jean, Lily, and the other kids. He remembered her words at the hot spring, her serious, solemn declaration still ringing in his ears. A smile spread across his face. Yeah, not even God himself could tear us apart. Tear them apart. They must be torn apart. On the 37th floor of the Sterling Holdings headquarters, in the chairman's office, Charles Sterling clicked on the viral post. The Aragorn and Arwen of the East Bay Comic and Anime Fest for the 100th time. Staring at the photo, the chairman was about to boil over, steam practically whistling from his ears like a pressure cooker. The punk he'd been hunting for half a year. He'd actually had the gall to show his face, and in such a high-profile, arrogant way, right alongside his precious daughter. In matching couples cosplay, no less. Staring lovingly into each other's eyes, Chairman Sterling ground his teeth again. What is this? This is a provocation, a demonstration, a declaration of war. He slammed his hand on the desk, rising to his feet. Still simmering with rage, he turned to his trusted right-hand man. Mr. Joe, what do you make of this? Mr. Joe, are you all right? Note, taking a day off tomorrow to outline. Big, high-energy chapter the day after. Looking forward to your comments and gifts. Mr. Joe's ocular fatigue, what did he make of it? He couldn't bear to look. In the office, Mr. Joe's pupils were vibrating violently. The sky was falling again. The sky was falling again. This time it was a full-blown, world-ending apocalypse. He had decorated Special Forces veteran, had been painstakingly, diligently walking a tightrope between three living disasters, hiding things from one, covering for the other, risking his life just to maintain a fragile peace. And now, out of nowhere, the sky had been ripped open by this colossal mess. The East Bay Comic and Anime Fest? Aragorn and Arwen go viral. Did those two not have a single ounce of consideration for his feelings when they decided to go to a comic convention? A veteran's life is still a life, damn it. But the worst part was, he couldn't vent his mountain of grief and indignation on those two little hellions. At this moment, all of the veterans' fury could only be redirected at the event organizers. What comic fest? Who the hell organized this thing? Who was the planner? He'd better not find out that kid's name. As the veteran seethed, Chairman Sterling, puzzled, called out to him again. Mr. Joe, Mr. Joe, are you okay? Mr. Joe finally snapped back to reality, meeting his boss's questioning gaze. He jolted, taking a deep breath. He struggled to regain his composure. I'm not dead. Receiving a response from his trusted subordinate, Charles Sterling nodded slightly, but another glance at the photo on the computer screen sent a fresh wave of anger through him. Good. Now that we have this picture, we at least have a general idea of what this punk looks like. The mask doesn't matter. You're a former reconnaissance expert. It's time to put those skills to use. I want you to find him. This time, you will find him. After his thunderous declaration, Charles turned back to his right-hand man. Well, is it too difficult? Mr. Joe, it's not difficult at all. I could draw you a photorealistic portrait of the guy without his mask right here, right now. But how could he dare? At that moment, the Special Forces veteran finally felt the true gravity and danger of his situation. To investigate or not to investigate. If he found him, how would he explain it to the young master? If he didn't find him, how would he explain it to the big boss? They were both his overlords. He couldn't afford to offend either one. The more he thought, the more his heart pounded, and the bigger his headache grew. Mr. Joe's pupils started quaking again. Charles Sterling waited for a long moment without a response and looked over with concern. Mr. Joe, what is it? Are you sure you're okay? Mr. Joe reflexively started to shake his head. The first word had barely left his lips when a flash of inspiration struck the veteran's mind. He abruptly changed his tune. No, I'm not. He snapped his head up to look at his boss, his acting skills kicking into overdrive. His face was a masterful blend of shame, weakness, helplessness, and self-reproach. Sir, I've been sick recently. Charles was taken aback. Sick? His concern for his trusted employee immediately overshadowed his anger at the punk. What's wrong? Have you seen a doctor? Mr. Joe's expression was grim. I have. The doctor said it's complicated. It's called. His mind raced. In the next second, the veteran smoothly delivered the lie without batting an eye. Chronic optical fatigue syndrome. It's not easy to treat. It's probably an old injury from my time in the service that's flared up again. I wasn't careful. The doctor said I need a lot of rest. Then, his expression shifted to one of solemn duty. But don't you worry, sir. If you have an order, I have absolutely no problem working through my illness. His tone was firm, his loyalty unwavering. Charles immediately waved him off. Absolutely not. If you're sick, you need a rest. Don't come into work for a while. I'm giving you time off. Come back when you're fully recovered. Mister. Joe hesitated, trying to insist. But, sir, the chairman's face hardened. Rest well. That's an order. From this day forward for the next month, if I see you, Mr. Joe, in this office even once, then don't blame me for it. Before he could finish, Charles blinked. A gust of wind swept past him. In the blink of an eye, his loyal right-hand man had vanished without a trace. All that remained was the soft click of the office door closing, and a faint echo from down the hall. Yes, sir. Charles Sterling. Coming back to his senses, the chairman felt a wave of gratification. That was his man. No matter the situation, always so loyal and obedient. Look at that. He gave one order, and the man took off like he was fleeing a disaster. He couldn't overwork such a good employee. As for finding that punk, he'd just have to handle it himself. With that thought, Charles turned his gaze back to the Aragorn and Arwen photo on his screen. The anger flared up again, and he ground his teeth. Fine. Aragorn and Arwen, is it? You're Aragorn, huh? Just let me get my hands on you. We'll see how many arms you have left. He glared at the silver-masked face of that bastard Aragorn, growing more irritated by the second, hiding his face behind a mask. I knew he was no good. Wait a second. The lower half of his face that's showing. Why does it look a little familiar? Familiar, my ass. If I'd met a punk like that even once, I'd recognize him even if he was reduced to ashes. They stayed on Spirit Springs Mountain for 2 days, having the time of their lives. 2 days later, amidst the reluctant goodbyes of the villagers and the children from the Hope School, the group departed and returned to East Bay. Anna went back to her internship, grumbling all the way. The rest of their friends said their goodbyes and headed home as well. That left the lethal and savage couple alone in the suddenly empty LNS house. It was about time to start thinking about their trip back home to Northwood in a few days. As they began packing their bags, they got some news. Mr. Joe is sick. Leo was zipping up a suitcase when he heard Claire and looked over at her. Claire put her phone away, a hint of confusion on her face. Yeah, he said he needs a month to recover and won't be easy to contact. Leo was understanding. That's probably for the best. Mr. Joe works really hard, and he's always been so frail. He deserves a rest. But Claire wasn't like her clueless boyfriend. She knew the truth about the Special Forces veteran. All his previous talk about being sick had just been excuses. But this time, was he really sick? The girl frowned slightly, feeling like something wasn't quite right. The fateful encounter the day they returned to East Bay from Spirit Springs Mountain was June 25th. Leo and Claire had originally planned to spend a few more days at the LNS house, just the two of them, before heading back to Northwood. But a call came from Leo's parents, urging them to come home. They were missing their daughter-in-law, something fierce. On the phone, Susan Wallace's tone with her son was stern. You're on break. Why aren't you home yet? Have you had so much fun that you've forgotten all about your poor old mother? Buy your tickets now and bring Claire home. In the background, Robert Wallace chimed in with righteous support. Your mother's right. Leo could only laugh apologetically. Of course not. We've been wanting to come home for ages. We're champing at the bit. But that wasn't enough to appease his mother. It wasn't until Claire leaned into the phone and called out sweetly, Mom, that Susan's anger melted away in an instant, replaced by a beaming smile. Oh, honey, come home soon. I'll make you all your favorite foods. When the phone was handed back to Leo, Susan started lecturing him again. See how thoughtful Claire is? Leo's face fell. What kind of double standard was this? All Bertha Sue had to do was say Mom, and suddenly she was a saint? He'd been calling her that for 2 lifetimes and never gotten that kind of praise. As he was silently grumbling, Claire snatched the phone back. She proceeded to sweet-talk his parents, showering them with care and well wishes, leaving them laughing with delight. Leo eyed his girlfriend, who was now deep in conversation with his parents. He was starting to suspect that his presence on this trip home wasn't all that important. His parents just wanted to see their daughter-in-law. The favoritism. Was a daughter-in-law more important than their own son? The Wallace family's firstborn was heartbroken. But then, a new thought restored his sense of balance. It was fine. The daughter-in-law was a hit with the in-laws, but he, the son-in-law, could make up for it with his own father-in-law. You, Bertha Sue, have my parents wrapped around your finger. But I, Leo the Hammer, am deeply admired by your father, am I not? When the time was right and he finally met his father-in-law, their bond would be legendary, the envy of all. They had planned to return at the end of June or early July, but with the summons from his parents, the lethal and savage couple quickly changed their plans. They would head back to Northwood on the 27th. On the evening of the 25th, they started packing. The morning of the 26th, they got up early to finish. In 2008, you couldn't just buy train tickets on a smartphone app. You had to go to the station in person. So they divided the labor. Claire would stay behind to finish packing, while Leo would head downtown to the train station. After leaving the house, Leo hailed a cab and quickly made his way downtown. He bought 2 tickets to Northwood for the next day and was about to head back to the L&S house. He had just stepped out of the station before he even had a chance to flag down another taxi when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and was surprised to see it was his big brother. Leo answered, "Hey, big brother." The voice of a certain Sterling Holdings chairman came through the line. "Hey, little brother, you busy?" Leo paused, looking at the tickets in his hand. "Not really. Nothing much going on." Hearing this, the chairman on the other end sounded audibly relieved and much more energetic. "Great. If you've got some time, could you come over to my place? Just drop by for a visit. The thing is, I've run into a bit of a problem, and I don't have anyone I can turn to. I was hoping you could come help me brainstorm a little. How about it? Is it convenient?" Leo had been planning to go straight back to the L&S house. When he heard the first part of the request, he was about to politely decline. But when he heard the second part, that the man needed his help, and noticed the palpable anticipation in his voice, his heart softened. Thinking of their strangely fated friendship, he nodded. "Sure, I'll be right over." After getting the address from his overjoyed big brother, Leo hailed a cab and got in. He gave the driver the address and then called his girlfriend. He told her he had the tickets and explained that he was heading to his big brother's place for a bit. "It sounds like he's in some kind of trouble. He asked me to help him out. I'll try to be back soon." At the same time, at the L&S house, Claire was on the phone while closing up a suitcase. "It's fine. You do your thing," she said casually. "I'm going to head back to my place for a bit, too. I need to pick some things up." As she spoke, she pulled several large woven bags out from under the coffee table. She was going back to Northwood. She needed to bring some good wine for her father-in-law. Charles should still have plenty of bottles stocked up at the Concord. She was just going to go grab a few. When the taxi arrived at the Concord, it had to stop at the gate for the security guard to register the visitor. Sitting in the car, Leo looked out at the complex. The environment was elegant and serene, the landscaping immaculate, exuding an air of quiet, powerful prestige. He couldn't help but be impressed. He'd always known his big brother was a man of substance, probably wealthy. But to afford a place in East Bay's most exclusive residential complex, this wasn't just ordinary wealth. This was on another level entirely. He might even be on par with his own future father-in-law. The thought flickered through his mind, and Leo shook his head with a self-deprecating smile. Just a thought. That was the chairman of Sterling Holdings. What were the chances he was the same guy he'd randomly met on the street and loaned a few bucks to? After entering the complex and getting out of the car, Leo followed the address his big brother had given him to the correct building. He had to buzz the apartment on the video intercom. Soon, the face of a certain Sterling Holdings chairman appeared on the screen, beaming. "You're here, little brother? Quick, come on up. I've got some great tea brewing for you." The door buzzed open. Leo entered the building. The Concord was designed with only 2 apartments per elevator bank, which impressed him again. A place like this, even the $2 million he'd just hustled out of Nexus wouldn't be enough for a down payment. He really needed to keep working hard. Right? "As soon as I get back, I'm doubling Isabella and Wyatt's workload. If employees aren't working themselves to the bone, how is the boss supposed to buy houses and cars?" The ruthless capitalist rode the elevator up. He reached the 16th floor. As the elevator doors opened, he saw that the double-armored doors of the apartment were already open. Chairman Sterling was standing there, waiting eagerly. Leo smiled and greeted him. "Big brother." The chairman beamed. "Hey, come on. Get in here." Leo had barely slipped on the guest's slippers before Charles was affectionately grabbing his arm and leading him into the living room. "It's good to see you, little brother. Sit, take a rest." As he spoke, Charles picked up the teapot from the table, poured Leo a cup, and enthusiastically handed it to him. "Here, top-shelf green tea. Try it." Leo wasn't a tea connoisseur, but one sip told him it was good. The aroma was crisp and clear, with a sweet aftertaste. "Great tea," he praised. Charles had already plopped down cozily next to him. He diligently refilled Leo's cup. "Like it? I'll give you some to take with you." "Brother, you can have anything in this house except my prized wine collection." Tea. Take as much as you want. I've got plenty. He was so incredibly generous that Leo felt a little embarrassed. Big brother, you're being too kind. Charles waved his hand dismissively. What kindness? We're brothers. No need for formalities. What's mine is yours. Oh, by the way, how are things with you and your little girlfriend? The topic shifted, and he started asking about his little brother's love life. Leo smiled. They're great. We're on break from school, so we're heading back to my hometown in a couple of days. Charles nodded, a wistful look on his face. That's nice. Not like my daughter. She's nothing but trouble. His voice was full of melancholy. Leo put down his teacup and looked at him with concern. Big brother, you asked me to come help you brainstorm. What's going on? You shouldn't have asked. The question poked right at the chairman's sore spot. Charles sighed, his face a mask of deep sorrow. Don't get me started. It's that damn punk again. Hearing this, Leo first blinked in confusion, then realization dawned. No wonder. His big brother was usually such a good-natured, easygoing guy. What could possibly make him so angry? It had to be that punk. Leo sat up a little straighter, asking with genuine curiosity, what did he do this time? The chairman was grinding his teeth. What did he do? The kid went too far. He wore matching outfits with my precious daughter. Took a couple photos, and I saw it all. No attempt to hide it at all. That's a declaration of war, a provocation. Little brother, I asked you here to help me come up with a plan. We have to work together and take this punk down. Just give me a straight answer. Will you help me or not? Leo understood. He looked at the hopeful, expectant gaze of his big brother and nodded without a second thought. I'll help. You say the word, big brother. We'll get him. He could completely sympathize with a man's feelings. Any father would be furious if their precious daughter was stolen away. What dad wouldn't want to throttle the punk who did it? It was perfectly reasonable. Besides, he and this man had a bond forged by fate. Was he supposed to side with some stranger he'd never met over his own big brother? So, let's get him. Hearing Leo's enthusiastic agreement, Charles's face broke into a wide grin. Excellent. I knew I wasn't wrong about you. Come on, let's have a toast. He raised his teacup, using it as a substitute for a wine glass. Leo happily raised his in return. They drank it down in one gulp and looked at each other with a smile. The air was thick with the camaraderie of two soldiers united in a common cause. At the same time, in front of the main gate of the Concord, no registration was needed. The black Maybach was waved through by a respectful security guard and drove slowly into the complex. Inside the 16th floor apartment, the two brothers, separated by generation, were passionately discussing and fantasizing about how to deal with the punk. The chairman slammed his hand on the table, declaring grandly, when we catch him, we have to break one of his arms. Leo, purely enjoying the chaos, cheered him on enthusiastically. One's not enough. For daring to go after our daughter, we break both of them. Charles slapped his thigh. Reasonable. Come on, little brother, another toast. The two of them, giddy with excitement, clinked their teacups together again. At the same time, the Maybach pulled up to the entrance of the building. The driver's side door opened. A long, slender, pale leg stepped firmly onto the pavement. Inside the apartment, deep in their animated conversation, Leo suddenly had a thought. By the way, big brother, how did you find out about them taking couple photos? The mention of it made Charles grind his teeth again. I didn't have to find out. They wore matching outfits to a comic convention. The pictures are all over the internet. Leo paused, then it clicked. A comic convention? The East Bay University Comic and Anime Fest? My girlfriend and I went to that a while back. He chuckled. Maybe we even crossed paths. Charles was surprised. Really? That's actually possible. The pictures of my daughter and that punk went viral at the convention. As he said this, a look of pride crept onto his face. I'm not just bragging, brother. My daughter, with her looks and her presence, she must have turned so many heads at that convention. I heard the organizers had some kind of contest. She had to have one first place, no question. Leo frowned. First, and he waved his hand. Brother, I'm not just bragging either. My girlfriend was a showstopper at that convention, too. In the official poll, she had the most votes. Charles laughed. Little brother, you're only so confident because you haven't seen a picture of my daughter. Leo laughed back. Big brother, you're only saying that because you haven't seen a picture of my girlfriend. They both paused, looking at each other, their eyes narrowing as sparks of competition flew between them. Well, shall we take a look? Be my guest. The elevator ascended. Inside, a young woman stood calmly, holding several large woven bags. She watched the floor numbers light up and change. 10, 11, 12. In the living room of the apartment, Leo had already taken out his phone. Charles emerged from his study, carrying a laptop. Little brother, I'm sure your girlfriend is a looker. But compared to my precious daughter, she's still got to be a step below. Leo, without looking up, started logging into Happy Nest on his phone. Big brother, I'm sure your daughter is beautiful. But no matter how beautiful she is, she can't compare to my wife. Charles smiled arrogantly. Don't let your jaw drop when you see the picture, kid. Leo's lip curled. Just try not to let your eyes pop out of your head, big brother. As they spoke, they both found the photos and sat down next to each other on the sofa. All right, get ready. Let me show you my daughters, Arwen. You get ready too. My girlfriends. Leo suddenly froze. Big brother, your daughter cosplayed as Arwen too? Charles also froze. What, your girlfriend did too? From outside, the ding of the elevator arriving at their floor sounded, followed by footsteps approaching. Then, the click of a key in the lock. Inside, on the living room sofa, both men's gazes instinctively turned toward the door. The next moment, the door was pushed open by a pale, slender hand. The real-life Arwen walked in, carrying several woven bags. She looked up and saw the two men sitting on the sofa. Claire froze. Question mark. Seeing who it was, the two men on the sofa also froze, blurting out in unison, "Daughter, Claire." The air went still for a second. The two of them slowly turned to look at each other, stunned. Daughter? Claire? As they turned, their eyes fell on the phone and laptop screens in each other's hands, displaying the very photos they were about to show off. They were identical pictures from the East Bay Comic and Anime Fest. Arwen, ethereal and stunning, in a flowing white gown. Aragorn, his face hidden by a silver mask, his gaze gentle and deep. As the air in the 16th floor apartment slowly solidified, the girl who had just walked in and the two dumbstruck men on the sofa, father-in-law and son-in-law, were frozen in a tableau worthy of a world-famous tragicomic painting. Leo, Charles Sterling. Leo, Charles Sterling. Big chapter, justifiably asking for gifts and comments. The world-famous painting. Before walking through that door, Claire never could have imagined such a bizarre, ridiculous scene. Looking at the two men sitting on the sofa, even the former CEO of Sterling Holdings felt her brain short-circuit for a solid 3 seconds. She almost wondered if she'd opened the door wrong. But, in the end, the former Ice Queen CEO was nothing if not worldly. She looked at the two of them, sitting so harmoniously together. She remembered her boyfriend's phone call about visiting his big brother. She thought about all the stories she'd heard over the past half-year about this big brother and his feud with the punk. She recalled a certain Special Forces veteran's sudden and unexpected request for a leave of absence. All the clues clicked into place in her mind in a matter of seconds. So, that explained everything. A flash of understanding crossed the girl's face, and the corners of her lips tilted up slightly. Well, what do you know? Fate really is just a series of small coincidences and reasonable outcomes. Fine. This actually saved her a lot of trouble. The girl accepted reality in an instant. She looked back at the two men on the sofa and gave them a breezy nod. Chatting? Don't mind me. I'll just be a minute. She slipped on her slippers, picked up her woven bags, and strolled casually across the living room toward the study. She left the two men frozen on the sofa, and she left behind an atmosphere of strange, solid silence. On the sofa, the brains of the father-in-law and son-in-law were still rebooting. They stared at each other, wide-eyed. They slowly, stiffly, turned their necks to watch the girls retreating back. Then, they slowly turned back, their gazes falling once more on the identical photos displayed on the laptop and phone screens. Both men were, in their own right, dragons among men. They were sharp, intelligent, far beyond the ordinary. It was just that, before this moment, the thought had simply never crossed their minds. But now that reality had so gleefully and maliciously slapped them in the face, all the past clues and information connected with lightning speed. And then, it was painfully easy to arrive at the truth they should have realized a long, long time ago. Brothers, times, father-in-law, and the punk, square root. The air remained frozen. The silence was so profound you could hear a heartbeat. The two men on the sofa slowly, stiffly, raised their heads and met each other's eyes again. Leo, Charles Sterling. On the coffee table, the tea was still warm, steam curling lazily into the air, as if mockingly reminding them of the joyous, back-slapping camaraderie they had shared just moments before. Chairman Sterling's expression was a little stiff. Leo's mouth was twitching. Charles took a deep breath, trying to compose himself as he slowly stood up. Well, I'm going to go use the bathroom. In the kitchen. Leo, forcing a calm he did not feel, stood up with him. Oh, the water in the bathroom is boiling. I'll go turn it off. Their brains were still a tangled mess. They had no idea what nonsense they were spouting. One was heading for the kitchen, the other for the bathroom. anywhere but this living room. But just as they turned to leave, their pupils dilated in shared, abject terror. Leo, Charles Sterling. The apartment was huge. Leo, ostensibly looking for the bathroom, hadn't found it yet, but he did pass the study. He ducked inside in a flash. The moment he was in, he slammed the door shut and leaned against it, his heart pounding against his ribs. He was still in shock. He looked up and saw his girlfriend at the desk, methodically loading priceless bottles of vintage wine into her woven bags. She moved with a practiced ease. Clearly an old pro, Claire heard the noise and looked up. Seeing her boyfriend by the door, she didn't stop what she was doing. "All done?" she asked casually. "How did the chat go?" "Leo, it was fine. It was fine." Before they discovered the truth, the two brothers had been getting along famously, joyfully brainstorming at least 800 different ways to kill the punk. The thought alone sent a shiver down his spine. Leo looked at his girlfriend, his heart full of despair. "You said your dad liked me." Claire's hands finally paused. The girl tilted her head. She thought for a moment. Then, she answered with righteous confidence. "I lied." "Leo." Claire resumed packing the wine into her bags, adding over her shoulder, "It's fine. It looked like you two were getting along great." Leo felt like he could die. That was then, this is now. Before, he was the trusty brother helping to catch the punk. Now, he was the damn punk. What was he supposed to do? He thought he was coming over for a friendly visit. Instead, he'd walked right into the lion's den. Leo's head snapped up, his eyes pleading with his girlfriend. "Save me." Claire finally stopped what she was doing, looked up at her boyfriend, and a smile played on her lips. She walked around the desk and came to stand in front of him. She reached out and tilted his chin up. "Save you? What's in it for me?" Leo didn't hesitate. "Name it." Claire grinned, stating her price. "You owe me 10 favors." Leo didn't even think. 100. The extra 90 are on the house. Claire raised an eyebrow in surprise. "And call me teacher again." Leo's voice was firm. "Forget teacher. If you get me out of this, I'll call you mom." The comment almost made Claire double over with laughter. It took her a moment to recover. She wrapped her arms around her boyfriend's neck and giggled into his ear. "Leo Hammer Wallace, this is the first time I've ever seen you this flustered. Don't worry. Charles Sterling isn't as scary as you think. He won't really do anything to you." Leo's pupils quaked. "I wouldn't be so sure about that. If it was just Chairman Sterling, maybe it would be fine. But I was the one who just enthusiastically helped him come up with a bunch of plans." Claire, however, was unconcerned. She playfully tapped the bridge of his nose with a slender finger, her smile radiant. "It's fine. Leave it to me." A few moments later, in the living room, the three interested parties were seated again. The young couple sat on one side, Chairman Sterling on the other. The atmosphere was still strange. Claire looked from her boyfriend to her old man, raised an eyebrow, and began, perfectly composed. "So, shall I make the formal introductions?" The interrogation in the living room. The girl gestured with her right hand toward Leo. "Leo Wallace." She extended her left hand toward Chairman Sterling. "Charles Sterling." Then, she looked at her boyfriend and added nonchalantly, "This is my workaholic, Sterling Holdings' over daughter, hasn't been home in years, old man." The words nearly caused the chairman, who had just been composing himself into a dignified posture, to completely deflate. He couldn't hold it together. "Honey, give me some face in front of guests." Claire was unbothered. She looped her arm through Leo's and raised an eyebrow at her father. "He's not a guest. He's my other half. Charles Sterling. Question mark." Before the chairman could process that and boil over again, Leo was already scrambling to pull his arm free, offering an apologetic smile to his future father-in-law. "Big brother. I mean, sir, don't mind her. She's just a kid. She's joking." "Other half." "What other half?" "I'm just a guest, a guest." He then quickly poured a cup of tea for the chairman and offered it to him placatingly. Here, here. Bro, I mean, sir, have some tea, have some tea." Charles Sterling grunted and reluctantly accepted the cup, taking a sip. The crisp, fragrant tea filled his mouth with a sweet aftertaste. It improved his mood slightly. But the next second, he couldn't help but remember the scene in this very living room just a short while ago. The two brothers laughing and toasting each other. And his face instantly darkened again. He put down the cup. He glanced at his daughter, then at the young man sitting rigidly beside her. What brother? That punk. Charles took a deep breath, struggling to maintain a calm, authoritative air. "You two, when did you meet?" Claire was cool and composed. "High school." The chairman nearly shot off the sofa, his voice rising. "High school? You were together in high school?" Claire's expression was open and unabashed. "That's right." Before she could finish, Leo, seeing the impending disaster, clapped a hand over her mouth, and hurriedly explained to his new father-in-law. No, we weren't together in high school. We only started dating in college. In high school, we were just perfectly legal, completely platonic, and reasonable desk mates. You can ask anyone at Northwood High to vouch for us. In the middle of his rapid-fire explanation, he shot a glare at his girlfriend. Don't make this worse. The girl blinked innocently up at him. She didn't struggle against his hand. A mischievous glint appeared in her eyes, and her tongue darted out to lick the palm of his hand. The shock nearly gave Leo a heart attack. He snatched his hand back as if he'd been electrocuted, his eyes wide as he stared at her like she was some kind of demon. Bertha Sue, do you have a death wish? Claire, however, looked perfectly calm. She crossed her arms, leaned back comfortably against the sofa, and glanced at the still reeling Leo, a smirk playing on her lips. Teasing my boyfriend is so much fun. Thankfully, Charles Sterling missed this little exchange. Seeing Leo's earnest, vow-making performance, he was reluctantly convinced. Fine. He didn't really think his precious daughter would do something like date in high school. Northwood High had a reputation for being strict, so it was all Berkeley's fault. His perfectly well-behaved, aloof daughter goes to college and immediately gets a boyfriend. What kind of school was Berkeley? To hell with Berkeley. What had their standards come to? The chairman ground his teeth, already planning to have a serious talk with Berkeley's deans. The library and classroom building donation he'd been planning? That was on hold indefinitely. But high school, Leo Wallace. Muttering the name, a spark of recognition suddenly flashed in Charles's mind, and his expression changed again. Wait, you're the kid who was my daughter's desk mate, who went to Berkeley with her? She didn't go to Harvard or Yale because you convinced her to come to East Bay. Claire frowned, correcting him. He didn't convince me. I followed him here. Before she could finish, Leo cut her off again. No, it has nothing to do with who followed who. She came to Berkeley mainly for. At that moment, Leo's brain was working at maximum capacity. A flash of inspiration hit him. For you, sir. Charles was stunned. Me? Leo had already pieced together his story, his face a mask of sincerity. Yes, sir, think about it. You two were apart so often. You were here in East Bay, working hard, running Sterling Holdings, and you barely got to see your daughter. She missed her dad, so when she was applying to colleges, she specifically gave up Harvard and Yale to come to Berkeley, so she could be closer to you. What do you call that? That's father-daughter devotion. The long, elaborate explanation poured out of him, a seamless fabrication. At that moment, his bullshitting skills were operating at 200%. Charles was completely taken aback. He turned, looking at his daughter with a mixture of disbelief and hope. Is that really why? Claire almost burst out laughing at her boyfriend's silver tongue. She shot him a look. You smooth talker. Not bad. Leo gave her a desperate look back. Cut the commentary. Help me out here. Finally, the girl met her father's gaze, raised an eyebrow, and answered nonchalantly, I suppose it had a little something to do with it. Hearing his daughter's confirmation, the chairman was overjoyed. Yes. I knew it. My daughter knows how to take care of her old man. Going to Berkeley to be closer to her dad. It's reasonable. Perfectly reasonable. Seeing his future father-in-law's spirits lift, Leo seized the opportunity to pour him more tea. Have some more, sir, wet your whistle. The atmosphere in the living room finally began to relax. After another sip of tea, Charles's mood had calmed considerably. His glare at Leo wasn't quite as hostile. No, it was still hostile. He shot Leo a sidelong glance, his authoritative tone returning. College is for studying, not for dating. This kind of thing, what will your parents think when they find out? Before Leo could answer, Claire smoothly interjected. Leo's family is very supportive of us. They already consider me their future daughter-in-law. They even gave me the family heirloom, a jade bangle. Charles was stunned again. Supportive? Future daughter-in-law? A bangle? He suddenly remembered. Is that the picture you used for your happiness profile? That cheap-looking thing? Claire's eyebrows shot up. Cheap-looking? She made a move to stand. Say that again. Leo, sweating, quickly pulled his girlfriend back down. Yes. It's a cheap-looking thing. Look at you. How can you talk to your father like that? As soon as he finished reprimanding his girlfriend, Charles was glaring at him. Hey, how dare you talk to my daughter like that? Claire's eyebrows shot up again. How dare you talk to my boyfriend like that? In the midst of the chaos, they heard the sound of a key in the lock. Click. Someone pushed the door open. Sir, I just came back to return the car keys before Mr. Joe walked in, still talking. Then he looked up and saw the scene on the sofa. Mr. Joe. An exclamation point of pure terror exploded over his head. Sorry, wrong apartment. The Special Forces veteran, with practice calm, slowly backed out the door. The moment it clicked shut, his pupils began to quake as if the world were ending, the irises practically dissolving like egg yolks. Oh no, run! Happy New Year, everyone! For the new year, I'm asking for your comments and gifts. An uneasy truce. The sun was shining, the sky was clear. Bright sunlight streamed into the Concorde. On the dedicated parking pad, the Maybach basked lazily, its elegant metallic finish gleaming. It was enjoying the good life. Being a car was a wonderful thing. The little Maybach was very content. The next second, the building's main door burst open with a bang. Before the car could get a clear look, a figure shot out like a bolt of lightning and sprinted away, leaving behind nothing but a gust of wind and a faint afterimage. The rapidly disappearing figure vaguely resembled a certain familiar Special Forces veteran, the little Maybach. It didn't know what had happened, but it had a feeling its former driver partner was fleeing for his life. The human world really was complicated. The little Maybach didn't understand. The little Maybach didn't care. The sun continued to shine, and the Maybach lazily resumed enjoying its blissful, happy existence. Outside, life was peaceful. Inside the 16th floor apartment, however, it was a different story. The living room had fallen into a strange silence. No one paid any mind to the veteran who had just fled. Charles Sterling sat on the sofa, his face grim, occasionally shooting a hostile glare at Leo. Leo, for his part, sat ramrod straight, staring at his own nose, pretending not to notice. Seeing that this oppressive atmosphere was likely to continue indefinitely, Claire glanced between her father and her boyfriend. "Why is no one talking? Want to chat a little more?" The chairman snorted. His attitude was clear. He had nothing in common with this punk. Leo continued to play dead. Any topic of conversation felt like a landmine. Claire thought for a moment, then stood up. "All right then, you two just sit there. I'm a little hungry. I'll go make dinner." How to break a stalemate in one easy step. In an instant, the two men on the sofa shot to their feet, as if their seats were on fire. "Don't! I'll cook. Leave it to me." Watching the two of them scramble toward the kitchen, Claire's lips curved into a slight smile. See? Who said they had nothing to talk about? With one simple move, she'd given them a common cause. Then a thought occurred to her, and she frowned. Speaking of which, why was everyone so reluctant to let her cook? She might have had a few mishaps, but Mrs. Fong and Mr. Chen had both praised her. She glanced toward the two men in the kitchen and came to a satisfying conclusion. She couldn't speak for others, but those two must just not want her to tire herself out. They certainly didn't want her tiring herself out. They were more concerned about their own lives. In the kitchen, the two men were already busy. There were fresh ingredients ready to go. Leo grabbed a potato and expertly peeled it, then began skillfully dicing and shredding it on the cutting board. The rhythmic thump-thump-thump of the knife was steady and crisp. Charles Sterling, who was washing cabbage at the sink, glanced over and grunted. "So, the kid knows his way around a kitchen." Leo nodded, replying automatically, "Have to. Otherwise, we have to eat Chef Sterling's cooking." The comment triggered a memory for Charles. He recalled the few times his precious daughter had cooked for him when she was younger. The table full of kaleidoscopic blackness. The chairman shivered, nodding in grim understanding. Reasonable. Their eyes met for a second, and in that moment, they saw the shared trauma of fellow survivors. But a second later, Charles snapped out of it. What was he doing, commiserating with the damn punk who stole his daughter? He deserved to be poisoned. His glare returned. "You little brat. All those times you called me big brother so sweetly. You were just planning to go after my daughter all along, weren't you?" Leo gave a wry smile. "Bro, sir, that's really not what happened. Who could have predicted this? It was a pure coincidence. If I had known who you were, I never would have spoken to you like that. The first time we met, you were the one who asked me for cigarette money. After that, we just clicked. I genuinely considered you a friend, a big brother." Charles was taken aback. He looked at the sincere expression on Leo's face and couldn't help but recall their various encounters. It was true. It was a rare thing for him to admire a young man enough to want to befriend him. Thinking of their easy camaraderie, their enjoyable conversations, he felt a pang of nostalgia. His anger toward the young man in front of him finally subsided a little more. But as he looked at Leo, though his expression had softened, he snorted again. "You got a silver tongue, kid. But I'm telling you, business is business. Our old relationship ends here. Don't think you can use our past friendship to get any special treatment from me." Leo nodded vigorously. Of course. We'll start fresh." Then he hesitated, looking at his new father-in-law. "But, big brother, let me call you that one last time. Just this once, don't think of me as Leo. Think of me as your little brother." Can I say one thing? His tone was earnest, his expression sincere. Charles met his gaze and softened slightly. Fine, say it. The next second, Leo was leaning conspiratorially toward his big brother's ear. Bro, as your brother, I've thought about it again. The punk your daughter is with. He's actually a pretty good guy. All those plans we made before, maybe we should just forget them. Take your little brother's advice. Don't give him a hard time. Charles Sterling. He blinked, then, half laughing, half furious, he kicked the kid in the ass. In your dreams. With that, the atmosphere in the kitchen finally relaxed. The two brothers had reverted to their roles as father-in-law and son-in-law, but the tension between them had eased considerably. They even worked together with surprising harmony. After all, they were both survivors of a certain young lady's culinary experiments. They both had to learn a few things. As they worked, another thought occurred to Charles. By the way, I'm warning you. Punk, don't think that just because you're dating my daughter you can take advantage of her. Be honest with me. How far have you two gone? How far? The question threw Leo for a loop. He turned to look at his new father-in-law, hesitating, carefully choosing his words. Have you, by any chance, heard from your brother about that? This time, it was Charles's turn to freeze. Then, fragments of certain past conversations flashed through his mind like a highlight reel. Suggestions like, you've got to lock that down. Urging like, make your move. Your big brother knows what he's talking about. And, finally, the memory of his own delighted laughter during their last conversation. Good kid. I knew you had it in you, little brother. Well done. Charles Sterling. The memories came flooding back. The chairman's vision went dark, and his blood pressure shot up. You bastard. Where's my knife? The gratitude dinner to avoid a bloody incident before dinner was even served. The chairman left the kitchen. When he sat back down on the living room sofa, his face was black. Claire, who was sitting nearby sipping tea, glanced at her old man's expression, surprised. Did the kitchen explode? That didn't seem right. That kind of thing usually only happened when she and her roommates from room 205 were in the kitchen. Her boyfriend was better than that. Charles's face was still dark. The kitchen didn't explode. Your father is about to. He looked at his daughter, his heart aching. How could you be so foolish? It wasn't that he was old-fashioned about these things. He actually had a pretty open mind. And it wasn't that he disliked the kid in the kitchen. His impression had always been pretty good. And he knew this day would come eventually. But when it actually happened to his own precious daughter, he couldn't stop his heart from twisting. His prized cabbage had been eaten by a pig. And to think that he was the one who suggested cooking the rice in the first place. The chairman was so angry he wanted to slap himself. He couldn't catch his breath. He saw a plate of cookies on the table and reached for one to vent his frustration. But as he brought it to his mouth, something felt wrong. The cookie looked vaguely familiar. Then he remembered. His eyes widened in horror, and he slowly placed the cookie back on the plate. He was angry, but he wasn't angry enough to commit suicide by eating one of his daughter's handmade cookies. He wanted to eat something, but couldn't. Charles felt even more sullen. He looked at his daughter and tried again, his voice pleading. Dating is a big deal. Are you sure you really like this kid? Claire nodded happily. Yep. Then she added, I'm not marrying anyone else. For words. The chairman of Sterling Holdings could practically hear his own heart shatter. After taking a moment to recover, he tried again. You can't say things like that so early. You have your whole life ahead of you. You're still young. As her father rambled on, Claire's gaze drifted to the kitchen. Through the glass door, she could see the warm figure of her boyfriend skillfully working at the stove. A warmth spread through her own eyes. That's right. A whole life is a long time. And I've already missed one. This time, I'm going to love him right now. Charles noticed the warm look in his daughter's eyes as she watched the figure in the kitchen. He couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. What's so great about that kid, anyway? He muttered. Claire didn't seem to mind his grumbling. Her eyes, reflecting the handsome figure in the kitchen, were filled with warmth and a hint of smile. Everything is great about him. Everything. All of it. The whole package. It began with gratitude, was loyal to the heart's flutter, and fell into love. Love was something you knew in your own heart. It wasn't something you could explain to others. But listening to her father's complaints, she was reminded of her boyfriend's nervous, guilty expression when he'd faced his future father-in-law. It was rare to see her normally unflappable boyfriend so on edge. A smile touched Claire's lips. She understood. It was because he cared so much about her. It wasn't embarrassing. It just made him seem all the more adorable. But business was business. She wasn't about to let anyone bully her boyfriend. With that thought, Claire turned back to her father. From now on, be nice to my boyfriend. Charles's face hardened. I can't promise that. What has that kid done to deserve? Before he could finish, Claire cut him off, her voice calm. He saved your daughter's life. More than once. Charles froze. After a flurry of activity in the kitchen, Leo brought the dishes to the table. He was surprised to find the atmosphere had shifted again. When he'd left the kitchen, his new father-in-law had been barely restraining his murderous intent. Now, as he sat down at the table, though his face was still stern, the killing intent seemed to have dissipated. He kept glancing at Leo, his expression complex. Leo shot a look at his girlfriend, but Claire just looked as cool as ever, picking up her chopsticks to eat. Getting no answers from her, Leo wisely sat down and offered a humble explanation to his new father-in-law. "Sir, I wasn't sure what you liked, so I cooked according to Claire." The last word had barely left his lips when the chairman's eyes shot daggers at him. "Claire?" Leo, quick on the uptake, instantly corrected himself. "According to Ms. Sterling's preferences, these are all her favorite dishes." Charles finally retracted his murderous gaze, grunting in what seemed to be approval. The three of them finally began to eat. Out of habit, Leo put some food on his girlfriend's plate. "Don't just eat meat. Have some vegetables, they're good for you." Claire, without looking up, just mumbled, hum, and continued to eat with gusto. Across the table, Charles watched this exchange. He could tell that Leo's actions were completely natural, not a performance. He could feel the genuine care and concern he had for his daughter. And thinking about what his daughter had just told him about her life being saved, he had to admit the kid was thoughtful, brave, and responsible. All these excellent qualities in one young man. If he put his personal feelings aside, the kid was a damn near perfect candidate for a son-in-law. But the more he thought about it, the more frustrated he got. It was so annoying that he couldn't find any flaws. He found himself glaring at Leo again. The chairman slammed his chopsticks down. "Drink with me." Leo paused, then nodded without hesitation. "All right, if the father-in-law wants to drink, you drink." Charles stood up, looking down at Leo. "I've got some good stuff here. Let me show you what real liquor is." He turned and strode purposefully toward the study. A moment later, he returned completely baffled, his hands empty. "Where's my wine?" At the table, Claire casually pulled a bottle out of one of the woven bags at her feet. "Right here." She glanced at the label, then put it back in the bag and pulled out another one, placing it on the table. "Drink this one. It's cheaper. Don't waste the good stuff." Daily request for comments and gifts. The man-to-man talk in the end, the drinking session didn't go as the chairman had planned. His original goal, since he couldn't find any flaws in the kid, was to teach him a lesson at the dinner table. The first glasses were poured. The chairman eyed Leo across the table, saying nothing. Leo, getting the hint, promptly stood up and raised his glass. "I'll finish mine. You can drink as you please." Just as a look of satisfaction began to cross Charles's face. "The kid has some manners." Claire reached out and pressed Leo's glass back down. She shot a look at her father. "A guest is in your home. Is this how the host behaves?" "Charles Sterling. Just a minute ago he was your other half. Now he's a guest. Is this jacket made of Swiss cheese?" His heart was filled with despair, but years of conditioning under his daughter's authority kicked in. He dutifully raised his glass and clinked it against Leo's. "A guest, is it? Welcome, welcome." The first round went down. Charles, not giving up, slammed his glass on the table and glared at Leo again. "Your glass is empty." Leo, ever the dutiful young man, immediately refilled his glass. "This one's to you." Before he could finish, a slender hand pressed his glass down again. Claire looked at her father. "He saved your daughter's life. Shouldn't you, as her father, show some gratitude?" Leo was taken aback, then quickly waved his hands. No, that's not necessary. It was no big deal." The girl ignored him and looked at her father, a small smile playing on her lips. "Is your daughter's life a big deal in your eyes, Mr. Chairman?" Charles jolted. He slammed his hand on the table, his voice booming. "Yes, the biggest deal in the world." He quickly poured himself half a glass of liquor. "This one's on me. To you." Before he could finish, Claire's gaze drifted to the half-full glass. She raised an eyebrow and murmured to herself, "So my daughter is only worth half a glass of liquor." Charles Sterling. He started to sweat. He quickly filled his glass to the brim, nearly overflowing. "Of course not. I'll have more. This one isn't enough. There are 3 more after this." The plan to get the damn punk drunk had spectacularly backfired. The chairman himself was nearly under the table. He remembered the first 3 glasses were to thank the kid for taking a knife for his daughter at that intersection last winter. The next 3 were for taking a bottle to the head for her at the Dynasty Lounge. After that, things got increasingly ridiculous. "Thank you for tutoring her in high school. Have a drink." "Thank you for keeping her company in the cafeteria so she wouldn't be lonely. Have another drink." By the end, it was less a revenge match and more a gratitude party. Leo himself was so overwhelmed by the gratitude that he felt obligated to drink several glasses in return. Finally, Ms. Bertha Sue, perhaps feeling a pang of sympathy for the dwindling liquor supply, called a halt to the proceedings. The half-drunk chairman was still deeply moved. "See, that's my daughter, always looking out for her old man." Leo, wiping sweat from his brow, quickly agreed. Yes, yes. So caring." He glanced over at his girlfriend. Bertha Sue had already zipped up the woven bags, the remaining half-bottle of liquor safely stowed away. Caring for her dad? Square root. Which dad she was caring for? Debatable. But she was caring. After dinner, Claire went to the bedroom to make the bed for her father, laying out fresh sheets so the tipsy chairman could get some rest. Leo helped his new father-in-law to the sofa and made him some tea to sober him up. The drunken Charles leaned back on the sofa, his eyes closed. It was only when Leo brought the teacup to him that he suddenly opened his eyes. The drunkenness in them seemed to vanish in an instant, replaced by a deep, sharp clarity. He looked deeply at Leo and said, his voice full of meaning, "Kid, get ready. Being Claire's boyfriend is easy. Being the Sterling's son-in-law is not." After settling the chairman in his room to rest, the young couple quickly cleared the table and cleaned the kitchen before leaving. The black Maybach pulled smoothly out of the Concorde's gates, bathed in the lazy afternoon sun. In the driver's seat, Claire kept her eyes on the road while casually asking her boyfriend, "What did Charles talk to you about when I was in the bedroom?" Though she hadn't heard it herself, she knew her father well enough to guess. Leo just smiled and waved his hand. "Can't say. It's a secret between men." Claire pouted. "Fine, don't tell me." But her mind was already churning, plotting ways to extract the truth from him. Leo, unconcerned, leaned against the window, his hand supporting his chin as he looked out at the passing scenery. The afternoon sun was warm, and a gentle breeze washed over him. He felt himself relax, the alcohol making him pleasantly drowsy. His thoughts drifted back to what the man had said to him on the sofa. "My daughter, Claire Sterling, can choose to not care. I, as her father, can also choose to let it go. But to be the son-in-law of the Sterling family, the man of the future head of Sterling Holdings, you have to be able to withstand the scrutiny of the outside world. The moment you take on that identity, you are destined to be pushed onto the stage with Claire, to stand in the spotlight. There will be countless eyes judging you, countless malicious assumptions, endless questions and challenges. If this is just about dating, then all you need is emotion. But if you want to spend the rest of your life with my daughter, then you yourself must be able to withstand the test. For her, you must be able to weather the storm." Back in the living room, Charles Sterling had been completely sober, his gaze as sharp as a blade. "Can you do it?" Gathering storms, the thoughts receded like the tide. The words still echoed in his ears. "Can you do it?" The memory of the chairman's powerful question still hung in the air, but Leo didn't feel offended or uncomfortable. He understood the man's heart as a father. He knew that behind the challenging tone was a meaningful warning. And besides, a man with a daughter as exceptional as Claire had every right to demand the best from the person she entrusted her heart to. If that person wasn't capable enough, how could any father rest easy? Leo turned his head slightly, looking at his girlfriend, who was focused on driving. The sight of her beautiful, elegant profile filled his eyes with warmth and a soft smile. "That's right. A girl this incredible deserves to be protected and cherished with everything I have." Sensing his gaze, Claire glanced over at him. "What are you looking at?" Leo smiled. "You." Claire raised an eyebrow, even making a point to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, showing him her face more clearly. "Like what you see?" Leo nodded, his praise genuine and heartfelt. "I do. I could look at you for a lifetime and never get tired of it." A small smile played on the girl's lips. Flatter, but her mood had clearly brightened. The Maybach drove on. The couple chatted idly. "Claire, how'd I get so lucky finding a wife like you? Maybe you hit the jackpot in your past life." "Huh, maybe you're right. What if I'm not good enough for such a great wife? If I say you're good enough, you're good enough. What if someone else objects? What if they try to take you from me?" At this, the girl's hands suddenly tightened on the steering wheel. Her eyes narrowed dangerously, a murderous aura filling the car. "Then we eliminate them." The words almost made Leo choke. "Eliminate them?" The girl nodded decisively. "Eliminate them. Physically. You dig the hole, I'll fill it." Leo, amused, reminded her, "That's illegal, you know? We'd have to go on the run after that." Claire raised an eyebrow, unconcerned. "So we run. Husband and wife, Bonnie and Clyde on the run. Perfectly reasonable, isn't it?" Leo paused for a moment, then broke into a smile. "Yeah, reasonable." He turned his head again, his gaze drifting out the window. The scenery rushed by, a blur in the gentle breeze. He narrowed his eyes slightly, a quiet, determined light flickering in their depths. He agreed with his father-in-law's words. In a relationship, there was no need to talk about who was good enough for whom. He trusted his girlfriend's feelings for him completely. He didn't need to prove anything to anyone. But he wanted to. No matter how deep their feelings were, no matter how little they cared about what others thought, they couldn't spend their entire lives hidden away in the LNS house. A woman as exceptional as the one beside him deserved the admiration and blessing of the entire world. And at the same time, he wanted to declare to everyone, this was the woman he had chosen for this lifetime. And no one, no matter who they were, should even think about trying to take her from him. The afternoon sun poured down, and the end of June quietly ushered in the summer. The air was beginning to feel thick with the coming heat. In the distance, a wind was brewing, carrying the dampness of the ocean. It felt like a storm was coming. Perhaps there was a storm coming. And perhaps there was more than one. A cold, insidious wind. In a luxurious karaoke lounge in East Bay, 6 or 7 wealthy young men were draped over their female companions, laughing and flirting, their hands boldly exploring, eliciting playful shrieks of protest that were more invitation than rejection. Zeke K tossed his phone to Ching Rue. Look, it's this kid. The bastard is on the news. He's a goddamn influencer now. Ching Rue, with a girl on each arm, pulled his hand from one of their blouses and picked up the phone. On the screen was the viral photo from Happy Nest, the Aragorn and Arwen cosplay. The familiar black-clad, silver-masked Aragorn. A flash of malice crossed the normally smiling, polite young man's face. An influencer? Good. If he's famous, it'll be easier to find him. His gaze drifted to the other figure in the photo, the woman in the flowing white gown. For the first time in his life, Ching Rue was struck by a woman's beauty. His pupils constricted, a look of stunned amazement he couldn't suppress. Zeke noticed his friend's expression and chuckled. What do you think? See the girl? Damn, that punk has some serious luck, landing a top-tier piece like that. A greedy look appeared in Ching Rue's eyes. He rubbed his finger over the image of Arwen's face on the screen, his touch growing firmer. A piece like this shouldn't be wasted. Our hero owes us an explanation. When we see him, we'll have him hand over the woman as payment. Perfectly reasonable, isn't it? A raging, furious storm. In a mansion in the D.C. suburbs, the living room was decorated in a traditional, opulent style. A man in his late 30s rushed in, holding a phone. Mom, look, isn't this the daughter of my third sister and that Sue man? She's out there taking couple photos with some punk. It's all over the internet. From a nearby seat, a middle-aged woman adorned in gold and jewels added fuel to the fire. Our third sister passed away so young. That Sue family clearly can't raise her daughter properly. At such a young age, getting on the news with some random man. It's a disgrace to our family. On the main chair sat an elderly woman in her late 60s. Her hair was silver, her expression stern and imposing. She looked at the Aragorn and Arwen photo on the phone, her gaze lingering on Arwen's stunning face. A flicker of emotion, of memory, crossed her features. Then, her eyes moved to the figure of Aragorn. Her face darkened with anger. A daughter of the Chu family. If Charles Sterling can't discipline her, then I will do it myself. A deep, unseen undertow. Portland, the headquarters of the Quad. In the conference room, a middle-aged man sat with a grim expression, his eyes sweeping over his team. You've all seen this month's numbers. Happy Nest, in less than 4 months, has achieved what took us 3 years. Give them another 4 months, and will there be anything left for us? The marketplace was a battlefield, more ruthless than any war. On the same crowded path, there was no room for 2 tigers on one mountain. It was kill or be killed. The man slapped a file down on the conference table, the sound making everyone in the room flinch. David Chung is nothing. Their CISO, the one behind the scenes. Who the hell is he? I don't care what methods you have to use. Find him, and even the obscure, tangled threads of fate. Spirit Springs Mountain. On a quiet, secluded path in the forest, the silence was broken by the crunch of footsteps on fallen leaves. A middle-aged Taoist priest walked slowly to the small, ruined shrine by the bushes. He looked at the scattered bricks, broken tiles, and shattered wooden plaque, and stood in silence. He knelt down and pushed aside the dead branches and leaves, picking up an object from the ground. He unfolded it in his palm. It was a Taoist prophecy, the ink smudged and blurred, leaving only a dark stain. If the girl herself had been there, she would have easily recognized the original words, this dream. Now, the ink had bled together, the words indecipherable. The priest lowered his head, deep in thought. When he finally looked up again, his eyes were clear and profound, as if they held the wisdom to see through the world's illusions. He faced the 3 statues. The statues were broken and weathered, but they still stood with the stern, indifferent gaze of gods. The priest bowed respectfully. Ancestors, this disciple will descend the mountain once more. Daily request for comments and gifts. The train on the afternoon of June 27th, the young couple, suitcases in hand, began their journey back to Northwood. Just before they left, Claire was still pestering Leo like a curious child. So what did you and Charles really talk about? She'd been trying to get it out of him all night yesterday at the LNS house, but to no avail. Ms. Bertha Sue was not one to give up. A woman's curiosity about the secret conversations between the 2 most important men in her life is a powerful, eternal force. Even when Leo stood his ground, declaring, "I can't tell you," the relentless girl turned to her parrot and whispered a new mission. "You go. Find out." Reasonable was coming with them back to Northwood. Hearing his mistress's command, the parrot looked confused. Squawk. But one look at her threatening gaze made him jolt. He immediately started bobbing his head like a jackhammer. On it. On it. He flapped his wings and flew over to his master, cooing obsequiously. King Dad, what did you talk about? Tell me. No outsiders here, no outsiders." He was promptly swatted back into his cage by Leo. "Were you a spy? Stay put." In 2008, train security wasn't as strict. No one stopped them from bringing the birdcage on board. Lugging their suitcases in one hand and the birdcage in the other, the couple found their sleeper car. The 4-person compartment was empty for now. After stowing the suitcases and hanging the birdcage on a hook, Leo sat down on the lower bunk, ready to catch his breath. Just then, Claire returned from the dining car, carrying snacks and 2 drinks. She sat down next to her boyfriend and offered them to him with a sweet, attentive smile. "You must be tired, honey. Thirsty? Hungry? Have a drink. If you don't like this one, I can go get something else." Seeing Ms. Bertha Sue being so uncharacteristically considerate, Leo took the drink but didn't open it. He eyed his girlfriend suspiciously. "Give it up. No amount of flattery is going to make me talk." The girl put on a pitiful expression, blinking her clear, innocent eyes at him. "But I really want to know." Leo was unmoved. His resolve was a mountain. "Forget it. Playing cute won't work." "Playing cute won't work?" The girl tilted her head, thinking. A mischievous glint appeared in her eyes. "Well then, maybe I'll try something else." As she spoke, she began to scoot closer to her boyfriend. Leo was instantly on alert. "What are you doing?" "Bertha Sue, I'm warning you. We're on a train. This is a public place. The door is wide open." Claire gave him a dazzling smile. "That's not a problem." As she spoke, she twisted slightly, lifted one long leg, and hooked the door handle with her foot. With a flick, she pulled the compartment door shut. The move left Leo completely stunned. Holy shit. She can reach the door from her seat. She can close it with her foot? "Bertha Sue, are your legs even legal?" He didn't have time to be amazed, because the girl had already turned back to him, a smirk on her lips. "Now, it's just us." She reached up and casually pulled the tie from her ponytail. Her hair cascaded down like a waterfall. She shook her head, sending waves of a faint, intoxicating scent through the air. The girl bit her lower lip, her eyes sultry and alluring. She began to inch toward her boyfriend, who was now backed into a corner. "Hey there, kiddo, be a good boy and tell big sister everything. There's a reward for you." She was as enchanting as a 1,000-year-old fox demon, looking like she was about to eat him alive. Resolve like a mountain? As he watched his girlfriend get closer, Leo's resolve shattered into a million pieces. His soul was about to leave his body. "What kind of reward? Can I have it first?" He subconsciously closed his eyes, leaning in for a kiss. The next second, swoosh. The compartment door slid open again. Leo's eyes snapped open. He looked toward the door and saw a young family of 3, a couple holding a small baby, staring back at them, equally bewildered. He was still frozen in his leaning in for a kiss pose. As for the culprit, Ms. Bertha Sue, she had somehow teleported to the other end of the bunk and was sitting perfectly upright. Her cool, aloof demeanor had returned, and her hair was already neatly tied back in a ponytail. She turned and glanced at her boyfriend. "This is a public place. Behave yourself." "Leo. Seriously, lady, how are you so good at turning the tables?" The compartment was now full. The young couple was friendly, politely greeting them. They chatted and learned that the couple had been married for just over a year, and their baby was 6 months old. They had been on vacation in East Bay and were now heading home. The baby was a little boy, quiet and well-behaved in his swaddling. He didn't cry or fuss as the adults talked. He just stared with wide, dark eyes, curiously observing the two new, very good-looking strangers. He looked at the big brother for a few seconds, then turned his full attention to the even more beautiful big sister. He was so captivated that he unconsciously stuck his fingers in his mouth. He was incredibly cute. Leo couldn't help but smile and compliment the child, which delighted the parents. The mother even offered, "Do you want to try holding him?" Leo didn't hesitate, accepting with a smile. He held the baby for a moment, gently bouncing him. Then he turned to his girlfriend. "You want to try?" Claire had been watching him hold the baby with such practiced ease, a look of surprise on her face. At his question, she snapped out of it, a little flustered. "Me?" The next moment, the baby was being handed to her. The girl fumbled to take him. The Ice Queen CEO, who had lived 2 lives, had almost zero experience holding a baby. Now, with the swaddled infant in her arms, her entire body went rigid. She didn't know where to put her hands. It felt like holding a bomb. The young couple across from them laughed. "It's okay, just hold him. He doesn't bite." Leo, enjoying the show, added, "Yeah, he's not a bomb. Why are you holding him so far away?" Claire shot him a mortified glare, so angry she wanted to punch him, but with the baby in her arms, she couldn't. Helpless, she bit her lip and shot him a pleading look. "Help me." Finally, with a little guidance from Leo and the young couple next to them, Claire slowly found the right way to hold the baby. The infant's head rested comfortably in the crook of her arm. The little boy's eyes widened with curiosity as he stared up at the pretty girl holding him. He wasn't shy at all. He even reached out a tiny hand, trying to touch her cheek. Claire carefully extended a finger, and the baby grabbed it with his small fist, letting out a series of happy gurgles. His eyes crinkled into smiling crescents. The couple watched, amused. "He really likes pretty girls. I've never seen him smile this happily before." Claire gradually relaxed from her initial nervous tension, looking down at the tiny body in her arms. Feeling the warmth from his little hand wrapped around her finger, she felt her heart melt at the sight of his smiling face. She found herself completely smitten, unwilling to let him go. She gently tickled his little cheek with her finger, then held him a bit closer, lowering her head to nuzzle his forehead with the tip of her nose. The baby giggled again, a joyful, bubbling sound that made Claire smile herself. Leo stood to the side, watching. He took the opportunity to pull out his phone, open the camera, and snap a picture of the scene, his girlfriend and the baby, their heads touching in a moment of pure affection. In that picture, the cool, aloof demeanor she usually carried was gone, replaced by a soft, warm beauty that was even more captivating. The train passed through a few more stations. When it stopped at Shaw City Station, the young couple stood up with their baby to leave. To everyone's surprise, Claire was the most reluctant to say goodbye. The baby, now back in his mother's arms, seemed unwilling to part with the pretty girl, too. He held on her finger, babbling and refusing to let go, his little mouth turning down as if he were about to cry. The sight nearly broke Claire's heart. In the end, they exchanged contact information, promising to visit if they were ever in the area. After the couple and their baby had disembarked, Claire stood at the window, waving until their figures disappeared into the distance. Only then did she lower her arm, her gaze lingering wistfully. Leo teased her from the side, feeling inspired. "Want to have one?" She whipped her head around to look at him, her eyes shining. "Now." The word nearly knocked Leo speechless. "Now." Then he came to his senses. "What do you mean now? We're in a public place." Before he could finish, a mischievous grin spread across Claire's face. In the next moment, with a practiced motion, she extended one long leg, hooked the compartment door with her foot, and slid it shut with a swoosh. "No problem." Then, to Leo's cry of mock terror, "Don't you come over here." She pounced on him with ferocious intent. Of course, it was just a game. Even though they had witnessed the bold nocturnal activities of Brandon and Michelle on their first train ride to Berkeley, the lethal and savage couple wasn't quite brave enough, or shameless enough, to try it themselves. Night fell. The train sped along the tracks, a silver bullet cutting through the darkness. A single dim nightlight cast a soft glow inside the compartment. Through the window, the silvery moonlight spilled across the land. The two of them were squeezed comfortably onto one narrow bunk, whispering to each other in the dark. Claire rested her head on Leo's shoulder. They talked about the young couple and their baby from that afternoon. Remembering the feeling of holding the infant in her arms, she still felt a little wistful. "The little thing," she commented. "He was actually pretty interesting." Leo chuckled. "We'll have our own someday. Then we can play with him all we want." Claire shifted, turning her head to look at her boyfriend, his face just inches from hers. "Do you want a boy or a girl?" Leo didn't even have to think about it. "I want both. Boy or girl. Having one of each would be perfect." A smile touched Claire's lips, but she gave a little scoff. So greedy. Leo shot the question back at her. What about you? Boy or girl? Claire puffed out her chest, full of confidence. I want both. The night deepened. In the compartment, the nightlight was off, leaving only the soft, quiet moonlight filtering through the window. Squeezed together under the covers, their pillow talk continued. Leo, let's have a boy first, then a girl. The older brother can protect his little sister. Leo, when we have kids, who will you love the most? You. The son and daughter can take a back seat. Clever boy. Their quiet whispers continued under the blankets, a lulling murmur in the dark. Soon, drowsiness began to set in. Even Reasonable, the parrot in the cage nearby, was listening in a daze, his head bobbing as he dozed off. Leo, holding Claire in his arms, felt his own eyelids growing heavy. He slowly closed his eyes. The girl in his arms stirred, snuggling closer. She whispered into his ear, Leo, so what did you and Charles Sterling really talk about? Whoosh. Leo was instantly wide awake. Nice try. An ambush? It's a secret. I'm not telling you. Her scheme foil, Ms. Bertha Sue let out a huff of frustration and bit down on his earlobe. Fine, don't tell me. The next morning, the train arrived in Northwood. They hadn't told their parents the exact arrival time, not wanting them to make a special trip to the station. After getting off the train, they hailed a cab, carrying their luggage and the birdcage, and headed for Leo's house. When they got out of the taxi and entered their apartment building, they ran into a neighbor in the elevator. The woman's eyes lit up when she saw them. Oh, the siblings are back for the summer, she greeted them warmly. Claire beamed and said hello. Leo, standing beside her, felt a familiar vein throbbing in his forehead. There was just no explaining it. Back in his hometown, it was always the same old story. The elevator went up. As they walked down the hallway, the aroma of cooking wafted from their apartment. They pushed the door open. The moment it swung inward, they heard Susan's familiar voice from the kitchen. Robert, hurry up. We have to make a feast today. Bring out all my specialty dishes. It was Susan Wallace's signature armchair general style of cooking. The young couple exchanged a knowing smile. Leo put down the bags and got out 2 pairs of slippers for them to change into, calling out toward the kitchen. Dad, Mom, we're home. Their son and daughter-in-law were home. The Wallace couple came rushing out of the kitchen, overjoyed to greet them. First, they sized up their son. One look. They turned his head this way and that. Made him spin around once. Confirmed he wasn't missing any arms or legs, and had maybe even put on a little weight. Satisfied, they pushed him aside. All right, stop blocking your parents from seeing their daughter. Turning to their daughter-in-law, their faces lit up with beaming smiles. Claire, you're back. Let's see you. Have you lost weight? Oh, your poor cheeks. There's hardly any meat on them. Did that boy Leo not take good care of you at school? You tell us. We'll stick up for you. Claire smiled and looped her arm through Susan's. Not at all. Leo treats me very well. I was just missing you both so much that I got thin thinking about you. Leo, standing off to the side, was dumbfounded. He looked at his girlfriend in sheer amazement. Holy shit. No wonder she was the valedictorian. That silver tongue. He felt he should just hand over his title as the king of bullshitters. His parents were completely won over, their faces blooming with delight. See? Claire knows just what to say. Daughters are so much more thoughtful. In the next second, they both shot a sidelong glare at their own son. Not like a son, goes off to college and doesn't even think to call home. Leo blinked. Question mark? Coming to his senses, he immediately cried foul. That's not fair. I tried to call, but you two were always on the phone with Claire. The line was always busy. What was I supposed to do? Claire shot him a playful, scolding look. Mom and Dad are just talking to you. You should listen humbly. Why are you talking back? Then, she picked up 2 gift boxes from the pile of luggage and handed them to her in-laws with a radiant smile. Mom, Dad, these are for you. I hope you like them. Robert and Susan were moved all over again. Look at that. Claire is so considerate. They each took a bag and looked inside curiously. Susan's face lit up. Oh my, this skincare set. Isn't this the one I mentioned to you on the phone that time? You remembered. This must have cost a fortune. You shouldn't have. You can't be so wasteful in the future. Claire hugged Susan's arm, her voice sweet. It's okay. Spending money on you is never a waste, Mom. It's worth it. Robert opened his gift bag, and his eyes went wide. Whoa, so much liquor. Hey, some of these are really expensive. We couldn't even afford them at the big hotel for my factory's annual dinner last year. Honey, where did you get all this? Claire glanced at the bottles of fine liquor in the bag. Then, without batting an eye, she explained. I brought them from home. My dad's trying to quit drinking lately, so he can't have them. I thought I'd share some with you. If you like them, I can go raid. I can bring some more back for you next time. The two elders held their gifts, grinning from ear to ear. Standing off to the side, the official heir of the Wallace family felt a little left out. He held up the birdcage for his parents to see. Mom, Dad, I brought a gift. Susan glanced over curiously. Inside the cage, Reasonable immediately flapped his wings and began to shower them with flattery. All hail the Emperor! All hail the Empress! All hail the Emperor! All hail the Empress! Robert was amazed. Well, look at that. It can talk. Is it a parrot? Susan peered at the chubby parrot in the cage. Doesn't look like there's much meat on it. Robert, you think we can make a side dish out of this? The comment nearly scared the poor parrot out of his wits. He flapped his wings frantically, hopping around the cage in a panic. Mercy! 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 After the commotion died down, Robert, still wearing his apron, went back to the kitchen to wield his spatula. The fire was still on. Susan, meanwhile, took Claire by the hand and led her to the sofa. It had been nearly half a year since they'd seen each other, and the two of them chatted intimately. Leo sat on a chair next to the sofa, feeling like he couldn't get a word in edgewise. He might as well have been a stranger. Giving up, he got up and went to the kitchen. His father was at the stove, flipping food in a wok with practiced ease. He saw his son come in, but didn't turn around, simply calling out, "Here, give me a hand." Leo responded with a natural "oh," rolled up his sleeves, and stepped up. The two of them worked together with a familiar, seamless rhythm. It was as if he'd instantly found his place back home. As they cooked, they chatted. It was from his dad that Leo learned, to his surprise, that the family's Sweet Return Bakery had actually expanded over the past 6 months. After the main shop had established a firm foothold in Northwood, they had accumulated a decent amount of savings. Susan was no longer satisfied with just one store. With a bold investment, she opened 2 more branches in other prime locations in town. She hired new staff and promoted experienced employees from the main shop to be branch managers, further solidifying the Sweet Return brand. Now, the branch stores were also doing booming business. As his father whispered conspiratorially in his ear, "Your mom is loaded now. She's a rich old lady." Leo couldn't help but be impressed. He had only intended to help his mom fulfill her dream of starting a business, thinking a small bakery would be enough to improve their lives. He never expected Susan to have such a talent for business, turning herself into a real boss. He started rubbing his chin. Does this mean I'm a bona fide second-generation rich kid now? His girlfriend was the future CEO of Sterling Holdings. His mom was the owner of the hottest bakery chain in Northwood. It felt like the universe was pushing him down the path of living off a woman, no effort required. His father saw right through him and rapped him on the head. Stop thinking nonsense. Your job right now is to study hard. Don't think you can slack off just because your mom has money. You're young. Don't pick up bad habits. Living off a woman is a burden your father will bear alone. The last sentence was a complete reversal. Robert Wallace's true nature was revealed, a smug look on his face. Who wanted to be a workshop supervisor at some factory, managing this and that, working yourself to the bone? Living off your wife was so much better. Leo tried to bargain. Dad, don't be so greedy. At least leave a little for me. Robert was resolute. Don't even think about it. I'll buy my own new fishing rod. I'm still waiting to file a budget request with your mother. There's not enough for me, let alone you. Leo thought for a moment. Then I'll tell Mom you just called her old. Robert was stunned, looking at his son with a pained expression. You went to Berkeley. How did you turn out like this? So, are you going to give me a cut or not? How much do you want? 50%. 50%? Why don't you just rob me? Leo turned and shouted righteously toward the living room. Mom, Dad just... Before he could finish, Robert clapped a hand over his mouth. Sure, 50% it is. Deal. Deal. At noon, the Wallace family of 4 sat down at the dining table, happily enjoying the meal cooked by the 2 men of the house. Nearby, a chubby parrot, having narrowly escaped death, flapped its wings and sang praises to the Emperor and Empress, terrified that a moment of carelessness would get him sent back to the dinner table. During the meal, Leo asked his mom about the bakery's expansion. When the topic turned to her proudest achievement, Susan put down her chopsticks, her face animated. Oh, that. I told you I was planning it when you two were back for winter break. Then a couple of months ago, some great storefronts in good locations became available. Your dad and I did the math, and we decided to snatch them up. Now, both branches are open, and business is booming. Not only are our own signature breads and pastries selling well, but Omnimart is also collaborating with us, putting a lot of their products on our shelves. That Mr. Peterson from Omnimart is a great guy. We should treat him to a meal sometime. Leo looked slightly surprised and exchanged a glance with Claire. Mr. Peterson? Then it clicked for both of them. Omnimart and Sweet Return Bakery weren't really competitors. A partnership could truly be a win-win. This Peterson, from their previous encounters, they knew he was a sharp operator. Not only did he have a keen sense for business, but he was also a smooth and shrewd people person, leaving no loose ends. In that moment, both Leo and Claire had the same thought. This is the kind of talent we could recruit for Sterling Holdings/Mako Entertainment. Talking about the bakery, Susan grew even more animated. Mr. Peterson and I were just discussing it. In Northwood, we can probably open 1 or 2 more branches, and we'll have most of the market cornered. But the quality of our pastries is good enough to compete elsewhere. Mr. Peterson said OmniMart has more channels and resources in Portland and the Berkeley area. Getting more excited, Susan waved her hand grandly. With a little more hard work, I'll open branches in Portland and Berkeley. The name Sweet Return Bakery will be known throughout the entire state. Leo applauded enthusiastically. Go, Mom. You're amazing. Claire chimed in with a smile. You're incredible, Mom. When the time comes, I'll come work for you. I'll be your assistant. A few words of flattery from her son were one thing, but hearing it from her daughter-in-law made Susan beam. Great, great. Claire, when you graduate, I'll have built this business up, and you can come take over. We'll start you off as a store manager. Leo broke into a sweat. The future CEO of Sterling Holdings as a bakery manager. That was a bit of an understatement of her talents. He gently tried to remind his mother. Mom, Claire's family has their own business, too. But Susan waved it off dismissively. So what? The economy isn't great these days. It can't be easy for her dad running a small business. He's already been reduced to buying fake antiques, right? If things get really tough, we can have my in-law come help out at the bakery. He can manage the finances. Leo was speechless. He couldn't quite picture the current CEO of Sterling Holdings moonlighting as a bakery accountant. While Leo was having this internal monologue, his father, who had been quietly eating, suddenly felt something was off. He looked up, his eyes wide. My in-law is going to manage the finances. Then what about me? What's going on? I, Robert Wallace, haven't even gotten a taste of living off my wife, and now my in-law is competitor? Susan shot her husband a sidelong glance and huffed. You could just go fishing. She turned back to Claire and started complaining. You don't know, Claire, but your dad has picked up fishing as a hobby recently. On weekends, he just grabs his rod and heads to the river. He says he's fishing, but he never seems to catch anything. Robert's face turned red, and he argued defensively. It's just bad luck. The wind has been strong lately. The fish aren't biting. Susan pursed her lips. What wind? We only have the Riverwalk. The old couple was on the verge of bickering, but Claire stepped in to mediate. It's okay, Mom. Dad doesn't gamble or smoke. He just likes to fish. He's much better than those other men who do. Then she turned to Robert with a sweet smile. Dad, if you like fishing, I'll help you get some high-end fishing rods later. It's not your skill that's the problem. The equipment is important too. With just a few words, she had Susan seeing her point and agreeing that it was reasonable. Robert was even more delighted, praising her endlessly. Leo sat nearby, watching Claire effortlessly navigate the conversation between his parents, her smile warm and her words thoughtful. A smile spread across his own face. Look at that. That's my girl. In the afternoon, Susan went to inspect the 2 new bakery branches, and Robert had to go back to the factory. Leo and Claire, who had just returned to Northwood after a long train ride, were left to rest at home. They couldn't properly wash up on the train. Now that she was home, Claire casually grabbed a change of clothes and went to the bathroom to take a shower. Leo went into the study, took out his laptop, and prepared to get some work done. He booted up the computer and logged into AIM. First, he checked the Happiness Company group chat to see the progress of various projects. The new game, Friend Trader, had been launched and had already caused another viral sensation online. The game was simple. Each player started with a certain amount of in-game currency, which they could use to buy their friends and turn them into slaves. They could then command their slaves to work for them, or even give them a foot massage. They could also sell their friends for a higher price to earn more money and buy more slaves. It sounded childish, but for internet users who had never seen this kind of social game before, it was instantly addictive. And for Happiness, the most direct result was that, thanks to this new social game, the website's registered user count had grown by another 6% in just a few days. With a user base already over 100 million, that meant an increase of 6 million new users. As the planner and creator of this game, Leo had once again become a godlike figure in the eyes of all Happiness employees. When David Chung called to report the good news, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration for his partner. I really don't know how your brain works. How do you come up with all these ideas? Leo was modest. It's nothing. If I gave you a bit more time, you could have come up with it too. It was the truth. In his past life, Happy Nest had launched this very game in 2009. Of course, the David Chung of this life didn't know that. He just thought his chief strategy officer was being humble as usual, which made him even more impressed. Without all your ideas, Happy Nest wouldn't have reached this level in such a short time. He paused, as if remembering something, and his tone grew more serious. By the way, our company is riding high right now, but that also means we're in the spotlight. A lot of people are watching us, and even more have ill intentions. Besides me, the CEO, you, the CSO, are getting the most attention. You need to be careful. Leo laughed. It's fine. I'm good at hiding. When you're out in the world, you need a few aliases. For business, there's Kevin Zhao. For security, there's Mr. Zhou. So far, so good. David was still worried. You can't be too careful. The competition in this industry. They'll pull any trick in the book. Scams, traps, and for a young guy like you, they might even try a honey trap. A honey trap? Leo raised an eyebrow. Just then, he heard the bathroom door open outside the study. Accompanied by the sound of footsteps, Claire, who had just finished her shower, walked out wrapped in a bath towel. Steam swirled around her, her skin as white as snow. She looked as pure and stunning as a lotus blossom emerging from water, breathtakingly beautiful. Sitting in the study, Leo glanced over instinctively and nearly lost his soul to the vision before him. He heard David call his name a few more times on the phone before he snapped out of it. He couldn't resist another glance at his girlfriend's graceful back as she walked toward the bedroom. Leo's lips twitched. A honey trap on me. That's going to be tough. David was stunned for a moment. Then he remembered the rumors flying around the company about young Mr. Lynn's girlfriend and the viral photos of the Aragorn and Arwen cosplay from the Comic Fest. Understanding dawned, and a gloating expression appeared on his face. You're right. What company would be crazy enough to try a honey trap on you? If someone's that stupid, that would be hilarious. He had planned to work a little longer, but seeing his girlfriend emerge fresh from her shower, he suddenly lost all motivation to work. Wouldn't it be much more comfortable to lie on the sofa with his sweet, soft girlfriend in his arms? Only single losers had to work overtime. Without another thought, he shot up from his chair and eagerly went to meet her. Finished with your shower? Let me smell. Whoa, you smell amazing. He immediately started nuzzling his head against her, like an overly affectionate puppy. The tickling made Claire laugh. She pushed his forehead away. Leo, are you a dog? Go back to work. Before she could finish, she let out another yelp as Leo scooped her up into his arms, bridal style. No more work. The afternoon is for relaxing. He carried her to the living room, and they settled comfortably onto the sofa. Since his parents weren't home, Claire just smiled and let him have his way. Sitting in his lap, bathed in the bright sunlight streaming through the window, she casually picked up her phone to play a game and pass the time. Leo glanced at her screen. Oh, you're playing Friend Trader, too? Claire answered casually. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Just playing around. As she spoke, she tapped a few options on her phone, assigning various tasks to the slave she had bought. Slave number 1, Marco Shaw, was sent to work. Slave number 2, Dylan, was sent to wash cars. Slave number 3, Leo Hammer, was sent to... Oh, he wasn't sent anywhere. He was kept to give his master, Bertha Sue, a foot massage. The simple interactive features were enough to keep the campus queen thoroughly entertained. Players who were bought as slaves had to earn money to buy their freedom, for example, by watching ad videos to earn in-game currency. If that wasn't enough, Happy Nest thoughtfully provided an option to buy currency with real money. The person who designed this game is a genius, Claire commented again as she explored the game's features. The former CEO of Sterling Holdings did not hold back her praise. This kind of interactive social game once again perfectly captured the psychology of young internet users, especially middle and high school students. Being bought as a slave by a friend might seem embarrassing, but in reality, many were secretly thrilled to be bought by their crush. On the surface, they'd complain, "Hey, why'd you buy me? I don't want to be your slave and give you a foot massage." But inside, they were ecstatic. "Oh my God, she bought me. She's thinking of me." They might even wish they were their crush's one and only slave. Hearing his girlfriend's praise, Leo couldn't stop a grin from spreading across his face. He wanted to hear more, but he pretended to be nonchalant. "Oh, I heard that game was also made by that CSO from Happy Nest. He's pretty talented." It was a classic case of tooting his own horn. Claire nodded in agreement. Indeed. Then, as if remembering something, she frowned slightly. Talented, yes, but also very mysterious. When she had first seen Happy Nest release one viral game after another, she had taken notice and asked her subordinates at Sterling Holdings to investigate this CSO. The result? After a lot of effort, they couldn't dig up anything useful. The employees at Happy Nest were tight-lipped about their chief strategy officer, treating his identity as a top-level secret. Sterling Holdings had used some of its connections and had only managed to find out that this CISO's last name was Joe. Joe. That was far too broad. You could find a million people with that name. Even Mr. Joe's last name was Joe. Claire shook her head, not dwelling on it. She snuggled deeper into her boyfriend's arms. Instead of wasting energy investigating some CSO, I'd rather enjoy this beautiful afternoon with my boyfriend. The afternoon slipped by. As evening approached, just as they were waiting for his parents to come home for dinner, they both received calls from their best friends. The moment Leo answered his phone, he was hit with Kevin's booming voice. "Leo, my man, are you and the class pres back? Come on out and party." He could also hear Tessa in the background. "Is Claire there? Come out for dinner. Kevin and I found a new snack joint near Beacon Hill Park. Hey, we've both been sneezing like crazy lately. Is it because you guys miss us?" Leo, Claire. Back at Berkeley, the lethal and savage couple had been having a blast using their best friends' identities as aliases. Now, the real Kevin and Tessa were calling. Leo and Claire exchanged a guilty look. "We do. We miss you a lot. The snack joint at Beacon Hill Park, right? Okay, it's our treat tonight." That evening, the couple got ready and went out. They met their friends at the foot of Beacon Hill Park and went to the new eatery Kevin and Tessa had mentioned. It was just clay pot noodles, crispy chicken frames, stir-fried beef, and skewers, the usual Northwood Street food. Nothing new, but for old friends reuniting after a long time, the food didn't matter. They sat down, ordered a few beers, and started chatting happily, the atmosphere just like old times. Claire casually showed off the birthday present Leo had given her. The platinum double-ring pendant gleamed under the lights. Tessa's eyes lit up, and she gushed with admiration. "It's beautiful, and the engraved letters are so meaningful. You two are perfect together." Claire couldn't help but smile, her face beaming with happiness. Kevin leaned over to take a look and exclaimed dramatically, "Whoa, isn't that the old collar of doom?" In the next second, both his girlfriend and Claire shot him a death glare. "If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Just drink your beer." Kevin shrank back into his seat. Only Leo slung an arm around his friend's neck and whispered conspiratorially, "It's okay. I actually said the same thing." The two of them exchanged a look of mutual understanding and camaraderie. A waiter brought their food, filling the table with steaming bowls and plates. The two couples ate, drank, and chatted, laughing all the while. The early summer evening breeze carried the familiar scent of Northwood's nightlife. The streets below the park were bustling with people, the distant sound of car horns and street vendors' calls blending together. The atmosphere was warm and nostalgic. Looking out at the lively night scene, Tessa sighed with a smile. "Our hometown. It feels like it hasn't changed at all. Unlike us. We've all grown up." Claire smiled. "But between us, nothing has changed." Kevin raised his glass enthusiastically. "Well said, class pres. Come on, let's have a toast." The other three laughed and clinked their glasses together. After downing his glass, Kevin's spirits soared even higher. He turned and shouted to the counter, "Hey, boss, we're celebrating today. You got any cheap vodka back there?" Familiar Northwood. Familiar cheap vodka. Familiar Kevin Zhao, passing out after drinking it, sleeping like a log. The other three at the table didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was hard to say anything. Kevin's tolerance had improved a little. This time, he managed to down 3 whole shots before collapsing. But that wasn't saying much. Cheap vodka was still his mortal enemy. They called the owner over to pay the bill. Leo helped carry his best friend, while Tessa flagged down a cab. Tessa got into the back seat, waving helplessly at Leo and Claire. "All right, let's hang out again in a couple of days. I've got to get this pig home." Just as she said that, the drunken Kevin suddenly shot up, as energetic as ever. "Honey, I'm not drunk. Leo, class pres. Don't go. Let's go another 300 rounds." Before he could finish, Tessa smacked him on the head and pushed him back down. "Round to what? Go to sleep." Leo and Claire couldn't help but laugh. "Okay, you guys head home. Be safe." They watched the taxi drive away. The couple, left standing on the curb, looked at each other. "Should we head back, too?" "Yeah, we can take the long way." Their friends had ridden a bicycle there. Now, the bike and the key were left behind, conveniently becoming Leo and Claire's ride home. Leo expertly unlocked the bike, turned to his girlfriend, and gave an elegant bow. "Your carriage awaits, princess." Claire walked over with a graceful smile and placed her hand in his. "You may rise." The girl sat sideways on the back of the bicycle, her arms wrapping around her boyfriend's waist with practiced ease. Leo gripped the handlebars and pushed off. Hold on tight. The chain turned, the wheels spun, and they rolled off the curb and into the street, moving forward with the flow of traffic. It was summer again. The small town of Northwood felt timeless, its air filled with the familiar sense of life, carried on the gentle night breeze. The bicycle bell chimed, ding-ding. A song drifted from a nearby record store, a duet by Jason Mraz, I'm Yours. The gentle, lyrical melody, a perfect blend of a soulful male voice and a clear, soft female harmony, filled the air. Well, you done me, and you bet I felt it. I try to be chill, but you're so hot that I melted. The bicycle turned a corner just as the cheerful chorus began. So I won't hesitate no more, no more. It cannot wait, I'm yours. Leo executed a smooth, stylish drift with the handlebars. Sitting behind him, Claire's long, dark hair danced in the wind. Looking at her boyfriend's back, her eyes softened, sparkling like crystals, and a faint smile played on her lips. The lyrics spoke her heart. Yes, I'm yours. She pressed her cheek against his warm back and tightened her arms around his waist. Leo, it's summer again. Yeah, I want to spend many more summers like this with you. The cheerful love song echoed through the town's night sky. The bicycle wheels spun forward, carrying the couple through the summer night breeze, on their way home. That night, back at home, the couple prepared to wash up and go to bed. Leo, having just brushed his teeth and washed his face, dutifully picked up a pillow and blanket and started heading for the living room. Halfway there, his mother stopped him. What are you doing? Leo looked at her with an innocent, confused expression. Going to sleep. I'll just sneak in a miss. Bertha Sue's bed later in the middle of the night. That's what I did last winter break. His mother rolled her eyes. All right, enough of that. Do you really think your father and I are idiots? Sneaking back in her room every night during winter break. You think we didn't know? Leo's scalp tingled, but he kept his expression calm. Susan Wallace, I have no idea what you're talking about. I have the right to remain silent. I won't say anything until my lawyer gets here. Before he could finish, his mother rapped him on the head, exasperated. You little rascal, go sleep in your room. Leo, still holding his pillow and blanket, headed for his own room. He was stopped again at the door. Seeing his father suddenly appear before him, Leo looked confused. Dad! His father looked at him, his expression a mix of complex emotions and nostalgia. He took Leo's hand and patted it. You're all grown up now. Be good to Claire. Leo, question mark. Then he felt something being pressed into his palm. He looked down, then back up at his father, utterly stunned. Robert Wallace spoke with deep sincerity. Be safe. In the guest bedroom, Claire had already finished washing up and was leaning against the headboard, playing on her phone under the covers. She looked up as her boyfriend came in with his pillow and blanket, noticing his wide, shell-shocked eyes. She was surprised. What's wrong? Leo walked over to the bed and sat down beside her. He turned to look at her, then, with a complicated expression, held out his hand to show her what was in it. My dad just gave me this. Claire looked at his palm curiously, and then she saw it. Miss Sterling was equally stunned. When she came to her senses, her face flushed crimson, and she kicked him off the bed. Are you trying to kill me? You're sleeping on the floor tonight. The next morning, Leo woke up early, planning to go with his mom to check out the 2 new bakery branches. Claire was still sound asleep, snuggled under the covers. When Leo woke her, she mumbled something about the bakery, then buried her head back in the blankets. You go ahead. I'm going to sleep a little longer. After Leo and his mother had left, Claire, who was sleeping soundly, was awakened by a phone call. It was Tessa, asking if she wanted to go shopping. Still half asleep, Claire mumbled a reply. Then, when Tessa casually asked about Leo and learned from Claire that he had gone to inspect the new bakery branches, a realization dawned on her. The sweet return branches. Oh, yeah. The 2 bakeries your auntie opened are really nice. Kevin and I went there a couple of days ago. The new staff they hired are all young girls. They look so pretty in their uniforms. It was just a casual compliment. But on the other end of the line, the sleepy Claire was suddenly wide awake. She shot up in bed, all traces of drowsiness gone. What? Say that again. The first branch of the Sweet Return Bakery was located in the old part of town, near several middle and high schools and a large residential complex. On the way there with his mother, Leo had listened to her boast about how booming the business was thanks to the young girls she had hired as staff. They were hard-working and efficient. However, the moment he stepped into the shop, he was stunned. Before him stood a row of female employees, all over 5'5". They were dressed in neat pink uniforms with aprons, wearing white sneakers. They looked youthful, vibrant, and utterly charming. Led by the store manager, they greeted his mother with cheerful, melodious voices. Good morning, Madam Boss. Leo, question mark. Susan Wallace beamed and waved her hand. No need to be so formal. I told you, just call me Auntie Susan. Then she turned to her son, her expression full of pride. So, what do you think? Your mom's new branch is pretty impressive, right? Leo sucked in a breath. It's definitely impressive. It was more than impressive. The scene gave him an intense sense of déjà vu. It reminded him of the incredibly popular Holloland Bakery from his past life. That brand had become famous precisely because its female employees were as beautiful as flight attendants, dressed in bright, stylish uniforms. He had never even thought of that marketing strategy, and now he was seeing it in his own family's bakery. Even the uniforms were almost identical. Leo turned to look at his mother as if she were some kind of deity. Mom, be honest with me. What year were you reborn in? Holy crap, it's a double rebirth. A mother-son transmigration? His mother was bewildered by his question. What are you talking about, dear? Then she perked up again. Just look at this setup. Isn't it grand? Let me tell you, it was all a happy accident. From his mother's proud explanation, Leo finally understood what had happened. When the branch first opened, his mother had simply wanted to hire some young girls, thinking they would be more meticulous and better at promoting the products. As it happened, there were several vocational high schools nearby, filled with girls in their late teens and early 20s. They were already loyal customers of Sweet Return and loved the bakery's elegant decor and style. When they heard the new branch was hiring, they flocked to apply. These girls from vocational schools might not have had the best grades, but when it came to looks and style, they were a cut above their peers. His mother and her veteran employees went through several rounds of rigorous interviews. The final candidates were all beautiful, well-behaved, diligent, and serious about their work. Lined up in the shop, they looked like a row of models. As Leo was marveling at the sight, his mother was already introducing him to the staff with a smile. Everyone, come and meet someone. This is my son, Leo. He's a student at Berkeley. He's about your age, maybe a little younger. Our first Sweet Return bakery, the decor, the layout, and all the products, it was all his idea. A chorus of amazed gasps rippled through the group of girls. Then they all greeted him in unison. Good morning, young master. The greeting flustered Leo. He waved his hands awkwardly. Hello, hello. Please, don't be so formal. Just call me Leo. As he spoke, he couldn't help but glance at the flock of lovely girls before him again, sighing inwardly. Susan Wallace is one sharp businesswoman. If she kept this up, Sweet Return Bakery might actually replace Holloland from his past life. While Leo was sizing up the employees, they were secretly sizing him up as well. They had heard that Madam Boss had a son in college with excellent grades. They hadn't expected him to be so handsome in person. The girls' eyes lit up. They exchanged glances, each seeing the same spark of ambition in the other's eyes. Working here is great, and the pay is good. But being an employee is nothing compared to being the future boss's wife. They were all beautiful and confident, having been chosen from a large pool of applicants. Seeing such a handsome young boss, it was only natural for them to have some ideas. A tall, slender girl with short hair, about 5'6", blinked at Leo. You're so handsome, young master. Do you have a girlfriend yet? Leo was taken aback and was just about to answer when a familiar, pleasant female voice came from behind him, answering for him. I'm sorry, he does. In the next moment, everyone in the shop turned toward the sound. The decisive click-clack of heels on the floor announced a powerful presence. Claire, dressed in a white dress and heels, pushed open the door and entered. With every swing of the wind chime above the door, her long, slender legs seemed to step on the hearts of the female employees. She had put on a little makeup before leaving the house. Even with just a touch of powder and blush, her beauty was enough to stun everyone present. Her ponytail swayed as she walked, exuding the aura of an empress holding court. Her entrance instantly overshadowed all the pretty girls in the shop, reducing them to mere background decorations. Seeing her daughter-in-law arrive, Susan was both surprised and delighted. Claire, how did you get here by yourself? Claire walked over with a radiant smile and hugged Susan's arm affectionately. I came to see the new branch you opened. I told Leo this morning that I wanted to come with him, but he didn't wait for me and came by himself. Leo, standing beside her, had a question mark floating above his head. He pulled her aside and whispered, Didn't you say you wanted to sleep in? Claire blinked innocently. Oh, I changed my mind. As she spoke, she casually positioned herself in front of him, shielding him like a mother hen protecting her chick. Then she shot a sidelong glance at the bevy of beautiful employees. If I hadn't come, my silly little idiot would have been targeted by other women. If the pretty employees of the Sweet Return Bakery had been full of ambition and eager to make a move before Claire's arrival, calculating how to win over the handsome young boss. Then the moment she walked in, radiating the aura of an empress in her white dress and heels, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been dumped over their heads, completely extinguishing their hopes. How could they win? It was impossible. Back in school, they might have been the campus beauties pursued by many boys. The most attractive among them could even hold their own against someone like Sarah Lynn, at least a 1.5 on the Sarah Lynn scale. But compared to the woman who had just walked in, they felt utterly inadequate, like wilting wallflowers. Of course, if these girls had known Ms. Bertha Sue's track record, they might have felt a bit better. After all, this was the woman who made even Lily Liu, Isabella Zhao, and Anna pale in comparison. The most stunning and peerless cold beauty among a garden of flowers. The only person in the room who was oblivious to the subtle atmosphere was the clueless Leo. His mother, on the other hand, saw the dejected looks on the faces of her employees and then looked at her daughter-in-law, who was protectively shielding her son. She easily guessed what Claire was thinking. A smile spread across Susan Wallace's face. She didn't expose her daughter-in-law's thoughts, instead taking Claire's hand warmly. "It's good that you're here. This business will be yours to manage one day. Anyway, why don't you help me out today? Give them some pointers." Claire smiled sweetly at her mother-in-law. "Don't worry, Mom. Leave it to me." As she spoke, she turned to face the female employees again, her eyes narrowing slightly, a smirk playing on her lips. "Ladies, from now on, please take care of me." Meeting Claire's teasing gaze, the employees felt a sudden shiver run down their spines. It felt like they were being stared down by a tigress. There was no need for her to be deliberately harsh. Claire simply employed the management techniques she had used in her past life at Sterling Holdings. It was more than enough to teach these bakery employees a lesson. She clarified their responsibilities and detailed the work regulations. Since the goal was to further build the Sweet Return brand, it was necessary to formalize everything. And in this regard, the former CEO of Sterling Holdings had more than enough experience and skill. Watching the group of young women, some of them older than Claire, being lectured into submission, becoming more and more obedient, Susan couldn't help but marvel to her son. "This girl, Claire, she really knows how to manage people." Leo rubbed his nose. "Yeah, for her, this is nothing." After a brief training session at the first branch, Claire, along with Leo and his mother, went to inspect the second one. The second branch also had a team of young, pretty employees. They had already received a heads-up from their colleagues at the first branch via their group chat. They knew the handsome young boss was coming, along with his girlfriend. Full of ambition, the employees at the second branch had spent the last few minutes frantically putting on makeup, wanted to look their best. They had dismissed the warnings from their colleagues. "Beautiful. Ha, please. Aren't we all gorgeous? We'll just see who's prettier." As they touched up their makeup, they even cheered each other on. "We can win, right?" "Totally." Then, Susan and Leo arrived. And so did Claire. The air in the second branch instantly froze. The moment they laid eyes on the young boss's girlfriend, the confident and ambitious employees of the second branch were petrified. Their morale shattered. Damn it. How are we supposed to win against a cheater? That morning, after a simple inspection of the two branches, Susan and Leo found they had nothing to do. They just watched as their daughter-in-law/girlfriend whipped the employees of both branches into shape. Claire didn't seem tired at all. After finishing her work, she was still full of energy. Later, chatting with Leo, she remarked, "Your mom really has a good eye for business. If she can train this group of employees into a core team and further improve the service quality, the Sweet Return brand could really make a name for itself outside of Northwood, maybe even in Berkeley." She made this assessment with complete certainty. But then she shot a sidelong glance at her boyfriend. When a bakery chain expands, there will be pretty female employees everywhere. Someone had better be a good husband and keep his eyes to himself. Leo couldn't help but laugh. "Am I that kind of person? When the time comes, if you're free, you can handle everything. I won't even look." Claire nodded. "That's good. The first thing I'll do is upgrade their uniforms. Replace the white sneakers with dark heels, and add some stockings." The keyword triggered a reaction. Leo's eyelid twitched, but his expression remained unchanged as he interjected, "Well, on second thought, if you need my help for some advice, I wouldn't be opposed." Before he could finish, his ear was unceremoniously pinched by his girlfriend. "You perv. Not needed." In the afternoon, the couple met up with their best friends to go shopping. Claire and Tessa walked ahead, arm in arm, browsing through clothing stores with great enthusiasm. Leo and Kevin followed behind, carrying the bags. They chatted idly. The topic of browser games came up. Kevin told Leo that he and his college buddies had played almost every popular browser game on the market. Although most of them were repetitive, with crude graphics and simple gameplay, they were surprisingly addictive. Many of them had even spent a good amount of money on in-game purchases. Even games of that quality have people paying for them. Leo, if you really make that Battle Through the Heavens game, it'll be a huge hit. Forget everyone else. My buddies from a LAN center will be the first to support it. Kevin declared, patting his chest. Leo smiled. Don't worry, the first beta version should be ready in about 2 weeks. Even though he was back in Northwood, Leo hadn't forgotten to supervise the projects at Mako Entertainment. The first drafts of the art and UI had basically been churned out by dazed Isabella. The rest was up to Wyatt Way's programming team. Wyatt had called him yesterday to report their progress, saying that with another week of overtime, they should have a test version ready. Everyone else was on summer break, but the 2 key members of Mako Entertainment were still working overtime. Leo, the heartless capitalist, felt a little guilty. He'd have to give Isabella some overtime pay. A king-grade fertilizer from Garden Grab should be enough to make her happy for a while. As for Wyatt, why don't you come to Northwood when you're done? Leo had suggested over the phone. I'll have Claire cook for you personally. Wyatt, bro, if you want me dead, you could just say so. Jokes aside, Wyatt said he might actually consider staying in Northwood for a while after he finished his work. After all, he had grown up there, so it would be a trip down memory lane. But that would be at the end of July or in August at the earliest. It was still a while away. After hanging up, Leo remembered his silly little sister. Annie Cakes had just finished her junior year and had to continue her internship over the summer. She also said she wouldn't be back in Northwood for at least another month. Isabella was busy with overtime. Anna was busy with her internship. Some people wouldn't be back in Northwood for a while, but some people were rushing back unexpectedly. For instance, a certain current chairman of Sterling Holdings. He hadn't been back to Northwood in years, but this time he was dropping everything to make the trip. The reason was simple. A certain Ms. Bertha Sue had recently updated her joint Happy Nest account status, casually posting the picture her boyfriend had taken of her on the train, holding the baby. It was just a simple life update, and a certain Chairman Sterling happened to be online. He had tried to follow his daughter's account again, but it was still blocked. Then, the system had recommended the Reasonable Couple account. He clicked on it out of curiosity, and the first thing he saw was his daughter's most recent photo. In that moment, Chairman Sterling's vision went black. I'm a grandfather? When his soon-to-be father-in-law's call came through, the first thing Leo heard was a thunderous roar. You bastard! What did you do to my daughter? It was so loud it nearly deafened him. After finally figuring out the reason for his father-in-law's fury, Leo, caught between laughter and exasperation, had to explain at length, stopping just short of swearing on his life that they had used protection. Finally, Chairman Sterling was reluctantly convinced that he hadn't become a grandfather just yet. He still issued another round of warnings and threats before hanging up with a huff. Charles Sterling let out a sigh of relief, patting his chest. Thank goodness. His daughter surely knew better than to be so reckless. He wasn't going to be a grandfather that soon. Grandfather? It doesn't sound so bad, actually. The next second, he snapped back to reality. Bad my ass. I can't let that kid off so easily. Although it was a false alarm, it had served as a wake-up call for Charles. He picked up his phone again and started scrolling through the Reasonable Couple account. Life updates. Sweet, loving moments. The more Chairman Sterling saw, the more his blood boiled. This was outrageous. She was feeding him? He, her own father, had never received such treatment. And where did this villa that kept appearing in the photos come from? Berkeley definitely didn't have dorms like that. That kid had already gotten his daughter to rent a place off campus? How improper. By the time he finished scrolling through all the updates, Charles had lost his appetite for dinner. He was full from the jealousy he felt toward his son-in-law. He made up his mind on the spot. He was going back to Northwood. Work could wait. If he didn't go back, his daughter would be completely stolen from him. Next time, it might not be a false alarm. He might really become a grandfather. Claire had uploaded the photo with the baby on July 1 SD. Chairman Sterling discovered the account on July 2 ND. He bought a ticket for the overnight train that very evening and rushed back to Northwood, arriving on the morning of the 3RD. The efficiency was unprecedented. When he called his daughter to inform her, even Claire was taken aback. You're in Northwood. Why didn't you say anything? Don't you have to manage Sterling Holdings? Charles answered righteously. Work isn't important. The people below me can handle it for now. I haven't been back to Northwood in years. It's perfectly reasonable for a father to want to spend some time with his daughter, right? Reasonable or not, he was back. And with Chairman Sterling back in Northwood, it was no longer convenient for Miss Sterling to stay at the Wallace household. Leo helped her pack her bags and prepared to take her home. Susan had heard that her in-law was back and was quite happy about it. She even suggested going with her son to drop Claire off and meet him to exchange some business insights. Leo had to sweatily talk her out of it. After opening just 3 bakeries, Susan Wallace is getting a little too bold. Robert was heading out to the river walk for his daily fishing trip. Before he left, he didn't forget to whisper a warning to his son. When you see Claire's dad, don't mention your mother's idea of having him manage the bakery's finances. That position has to be mine. Leo replied, "Don't worry, Dad. I don't think he's interested." On the way back to the Coral Court community, Claire was a little sulky. She had only been back in Northwood for a few days, comfortably settled at the Wallaces, and now she was being sent away. Sitting in the taxi, she shot a sidelong glance at her boyfriend. "Leo, you don't love me anymore." The taxi driver, a man in his 50s, had been lazily driving and listening to music. Hearing this, he perked up immediately. He discreetly turned down the volume, his ears pricked up for some juicy gossip. Leo was exasperated. "How does taking you home mean I don't love you?" Claire pouted. "You're sending me off to another man." The driver's eyes went wide. He glanced at Leo in the rearview mirror as if looking at a scumbag. Leo quickly clarified, "Sir, please don't misunderstand. The man she's talking about is her dad. The small town wasn't that big." Soon, the taxi arrived at its destination. As they got out at the entrance of Coral Court, the driver commented, "This is an expensive neighborhood. Your father-in-law must be pretty rich, kid." Leo's lips twitched. "Yeah, he's doing okay." Carrying the luggage, they arrived at the familiar Sterling villa. As they opened the door, Chairman Sterling, who had also just returned from the train station, was already sitting on the sofa. Seeing his daughter, he immediately stood up with a broad smile. "Claire, you're back. Come, sit down and rest." He didn't forget to sneak a worried glance at her stomach. Good, it was flat. Safe. Then he turned to Leo, huffed, and said nothing. Leo forced a smile. Uncle, I got her here safely." Charles nodded with a stern expression. "Good. You can go now." Claire was not having it. She grabbed her boyfriend's arm. "Don't go. You just got here. Stay with me." Chairman Sterling's eyelid twitched. Noticing his father-in-law's expression, Leo quickly pulled his arm away. No, Uncle just got back. You should spend some time with him." Then he turned to his father-in-law with an apologetic smile. "Uncle, I actually have something to do. My friend's mom is having another baby. I have to go see her. I'll be leaving now." He shot a series of urgent glances at his girlfriend. "Don't worry. I'll definitely come find you later. I'm out, call me." Then he waved enthusiastically at his father-in-law and beat a hasty retreat. Watching Leo leave, Charles was slightly satisfied. The kid knew his place. He turned to his daughter with a smile, about to say something. But Claire just shot her old man a displeased look, huffed, and went to her room with her luggage. Charles shook his head helplessly. It was true what they said. You can't keep a daughter at home forever. The housekeeper, Mrs. Fong, came out and said with a gentle smile, "Mr. Sterling, that boy Leo is actually very nice." Charles snorted. "He's nice enough, but seeing him just ticks me off." He waved his hand. "Never mind. I'm going to the study. Mrs. Fong, please bring me a pot of tea." His spirits lifted slightly. "I haven't been back in years. It's a good chance to check on my collection of treasures." He walked toward the study with renewed enthusiasm. A moment later, a disbelieving gasp echoed from the study. Then Chairman Sterling rushed out, his face a mask of horror. "Mrs. Fong, were we robbed?" After dropping Claire off at her family's villa in Coral Court, Leo passed by the community market on his way home. He stopped in to buy some groceries. That afternoon, he played the part of the dutiful son and cooked a meal for his parents. The 3 of them sat at the dining table. Though the food was delicious, the absence of one person made the meal feel strangely quiet, especially for Susan. Usually, she would be chatting and laughing with her daughter-in-law. Now, sitting across from her were just the 2 men of the house, big and small. Neither of them was particularly pleasing to the eye. The food tasted bland. "I wonder when Claire will come back," she mumbled. It was only the first day since her daughter-in-law had left, and she was already missing her. Robert was more understanding. Her dad just got back. It's only right for her to spend some time with him. Besides, they're not married yet. She can't be at our place all the time. He shouldn't have said that. His words gave Susan an idea. "You're right. It's still too early for marriage. But why don't we pick a day, while her dad is here, for our families to meet and settle the engagement? We're doing well now. We can afford the bride price. Whatever her dad wants, he can just ask." She looked up at her son. "Son, tell me, what does Claire's dad need?" Leo, caught between laughter and exasperation, put a piece of pork rib in his mother's bowl. "Don't be in such a hurry. I don't think he needs anything." If he's lacking anything, Leo thought, subconsciously glancing at the row of expensive liquors on the kitchen cabinet and the collection of antiques displayed on the living room shelf. Chairman Sterling probably didn't need anything before, but that was before Ms. Bertha Sue packed it all up in sacks and moved it to our house. After lunch, Robert and Susan went to the kitchen to do the dishes. Leo went to his room, lay down on his bed, and was about to message his girlfriend when his phone buzzed. A message from Miss Bertha Sue had already arrived. "Leo, you haven't contacted me for a whole hour and 13 minutes. It was a pouty, accusatory complaint. In his past life, he never would have imagined that the aloof campus queen of Northwood High could have such a clingy, adorable side. Leo quickly typed out a long reply, coaxing and soothing his girlfriend. Then he played a few rounds of Brainiac Blitz with her, demolishing more than a dozen elementary school kids in the arena. Finally, she was appeased. But that wasn't enough. He had to promise to visit her at her villa first thing tomorrow morning before she was truly satisfied. Before hanging up, she huffed, "Since you're not here, I'm letting Leo hammer sleep with me tonight." Leo readily agreed. Fine, you can use him as a footrest again." He hung up and sighed. Damn it, that sooty-headed doll gets lucky again. That evening, after dinner, his parents went out for a walk, with Reasonable the parrot in tow as their loyal companion. Leo was home alone. He went to the study to work for a bit. Without his girlfriend around, it was a little lonely, but his work efficiency shot up. He called David Chung, then checked in on the project progress with dazed Isabella and young Master Wyatt at Mako Entertainment. Then he chatted with Potato for a bit. Potato mentioned that the big climax of the Battle Through the Heavens novel was set to be released around the end of July, which would time perfectly with the launch of the browser game. Before they ended the chat, Potato remembered something. "By the way, Leo, after the Comic Fest, I followed your and your sister-in-law's joint account. The Reasonable Couple, right? It's pretty interesting. It actually gave me some inspiration for the plot." Leo was curious and asked for more details, but Potato was being mysterious. "Patience. When I write it, you and your sister-in-law will see." As expected of the future king of web novels, he really knows how to build suspense. Leo chuckled. He was now even more curious about the upcoming chapters of Battle Through the Heavens. It seemed his rebirth had caused a butterfly effect, creating new changes in this classic masterpiece. At 11 o'clock, after washing up, he got into bed. He sent a goodnight message to his girlfriend. Before he could put his phone down, it buzzed with a reply from Ms. Bertha Sue, a picture message. He opened it. The message was concise. "Be here early tomorrow, or else." Below the text was a selfie. In the photo, Claire, dressed in her pajamas, was sitting cross-legged on her bed. In one arm, she held the Blackie the Leo Hammer doll. Her other hand was making a throat-slitting gesture at the doll. The threat was unmistakable. Leo couldn't help but laugh. He saved the photo and replied, "Yes, ma'am." The next morning, Leo arrived as promised. He got to the Sterling Villa in Coral Court just as Claire was coming out to greet him. The couple had barely had a moment to be affectionate when the ghostly figure of a certain Chairman Sterling drifted out from the living room, his gaze sweeping over them. The look froze Leo in his tracks, preventing any untoward advances. He cleared his throat and, with an air of utmost propriety, extended his hand to shake his girlfriend's. Good morning. Claire glanced over her shoulder and saw her old man. Understanding dawned. She huffed, took her boyfriend's hand, and pulled him inside. "Let's go to my room." Even in her bedroom, they didn't dare do anything. Her father was just next door. To show that he had nothing to hide, Leo even left the door open. Every now and then, he would see the chairman of Sterling Holdings casually stroll past the doorway. Any funny business would be caught instantly. In the end, Leo pulled Claire over to the desk, and they took out their textbooks to study for the next semester. College students on summer break, full of positive energy. After a while, they couldn't stand being cooped up in the house any longer. Claire dragged Leo out, finally escaping her father's surveillance. Charles didn't stop them, but as they were leaving, he gave his son-in-law a stern look. "You can go out and have fun, but you have to bring her back by 9 o'clock. Claire was not happy with this arrangement and had no intention of complying. But the rule was aimed at Leo. While his girlfriend could protest, he couldn't openly defy his future father-in-law. So, after a day of fun, despite Claire's pouting and pleading, he was firm and brought her home on time. This made Chairman Sterling happy, but it made Claire unhappy. Their plan for a joyful summer vacation was half ruined by her father playing third wheel. And when Miss Sterling was unhappy, she would vent her frustration by cooking. When Chef Sue was in a good mood, her creations were already apocalyptic. When she was in a bad mood, the food she made could only be described as horrifying. Chairman Sterling had to grit his teeth and force it down, feeling every organ in his body screaming in protest. After each meal, he felt like he had just survived a battle, utterly exhausted and on the verge of collapse, lying in his rocking chair in the study. Mrs. Fong, ever considerate, would bring him a pot of tea. Mr. Sterling, have some of this. It'll cleanse your stomach. Charles thanked her, took a sip, and sighed in relief. It's still your tea that's the best, Mrs. Fong. Then, as if remembering something, he looked at his family's long-serving housekeeper, his expression uncertain. So what you said last time, about the antiques in the study not being stolen, but that Claire had put them away for me. You said she was storing them for her dad. The ever-reliable Mrs. Fong smiled warmly, her expression unchanging. Yes, don't worry, I wasn't lying. Charles nodded, feeling a little touched. That child, she's quite filial in her own way. Filial or not, the days went on. Chairman Sterling felt his energy draining daily. He had to manage Sterling Holdings remotely, keep a close watch on that punk kid, and endure his daughter's culinary bombardments. He had never felt so tired in his life. Being a father is hard. At the small convenience store by the Riverwalk Bridge, Charles sighed, his voice full of weariness as he reminisced about the past few days. The store owner eyed the customer who had been standing at his counter for a while and said impatiently, So, are you buying the cigarettes or not? There are people waiting. Charles snapped out of his reverie and apologized, reaching for his wallet. He found nothing. He had forgotten it. Just as he was feeling embarrassed, a hand reached out from behind him and slapped a $20 bill on the counter. It's all right, I've got it. It's on me, little brother. Charles was stunned. He turned around gratefully to thank the person behind him. Thank you, my good man. I really forgot my wallet. I'll go home and get the money to pay you back. The customer behind him, carrying a fishing rod, waved his hand dismissively. It's nothing. Forgetting your wallet happens to everyone. He paused, then clapped the man on the shoulder good-naturedly. Robert Wallace, out for his daily fishing trip, said with a cheerful smile, Being a dad isn't easy. Consider this pack on me, little brother. It was unexpected, yet perfectly reasonable. Unable to withstand his daughter's culinary onslaught, Chairman Sterling had gone for a walk by the river. While buying a pack of cigarettes at the convenience store on the bridge, he had unexpectedly met a kind-hearted gentleman. A pack of cigarettes, a few dozen bucks, wasn't much, but the kindness was priceless. As the chairman of Sterling Holdings, he was used to being showered with expensive gifts and flattery, none of which he cared for. It was these simple, ordinary acts of kindness that he truly appreciated. It had been the same with a certain young man at the convenience store near the Dynasty Lounge in Berkeley, and it was the same now with this gentleman by the Riverwalk in Northwood. A pack of cigarettes sparked a friendship. They were around the same age, and, as they chatted, they found they got along surprisingly well. Soon, they were calling each other Big Brother and Little Brother. The situation felt strangely familiar to Chairman Sterling, but then he dismissed the thought. He only had one precious daughter, and the last punk kid he had lent cigarette money to had already stolen her away. What were the chances that this kind-hearted Big Brother could also steal his daughter? That would be too absurd. Not even a novel or a TV show would dare to write such a ridiculous plot. With that thought, Chairman Sterling relaxed and fully embraced his new friendship. He hadn't been back to Northwood in years and didn't have many friends or acquaintances there. The few people he did know were too intimidated by his status to treat him as an equal. It was a rare pleasure to meet someone his age who didn't know who he was and with whom he could have a genuine conversation. Since he had nothing to do at home all day anyway, and his new friend mentioned he often fished by the Riverwalk, Chairman Sterling's interest was piqued. Fishing? Sounds interesting. Mind if I join you, Big Brother? For Leo and Claire, this was a pleasant surprise. Ever since a certain Chairman Sterling had stormed back into Northwood, he had become a 1,000-watt third wheel. Worse, he had nothing better to do all day than to keep a hawk-like watch on them. It was a real nuisance. But in the past few days, Chairman Sterling had unexpectedly changed his routine. He would leave the house early in the morning, full of energy, and not return until evening, sometimes even later, looking thoroughly pleased with himself. When Claire mentioned this to her boyfriend, she was puzzled. But while the situation was confusing for the young couple, especially Leo, it was as if a weight had been lifted. With his father-in-law out of the house, he could go to the Sterling Villa and have some private time with his girlfriend. Mrs. Fong was no problem at all. She was on their side. She would even act as a lookout. Sometimes, when Leo was leaving in the evening, he would run into his father-in-law returning home. He would quickly greet him. Chairman Sterling, busy texting someone on his phone with a broad smile, would just glance up, grunt a response instead of his usual scowl, and go back to his texting. This left Leo utterly confused. On his way home, He called Claire to chat about it, offering a tentative theory. Your dad is dating? That evening, when Leo got home, he found only his mother there. He looked around. Mom, where's Dad? Susan, sitting on the sofa cracking sunflower seeds and watching TV, replied casually, Your dad's still out fishing. He's been coming home later and later these days. I don't know what's so great about fishing. She grumbled a little. Just as they were talking, they heard the key turn in the lock. Robert walked in, carrying his bucket and fishing rod, humming a tune, clearly in a good mood. Susan shot him a look. So you decided to come home? Let me guess, didn't catch anything again? Robert waved his hand dismissively. The fish weren't biting today. Besides, fishing is about cultivating one's character. Whether you catch anything is not important. As he spoke, his phone buzzed with a message. He glanced at the screen, grinned, and started typing as he walked in the house. Leo watched his father's cheerful back and asked, puzzled, What's up with Dad? Susan leisurely cracked another seed. He seems to have made a new fishing buddy. They're as close as sworn brothers. Oh well, don't worry about your dad. Tell me, how are things with you and Claire? Without the third wheel of a father-in-law, Leo and Claire were having a great time. And Chairman Sterling, having made a new friend, was less focused on his daughter and her punk boyfriend. The two new friends got along famously. Now, Charles would go out early every morning to watch his big brother fish by the Riverwalk. He was even getting the itch to try it himself. They would sit on their little stools by the river, chatting about everything and nothing, thoroughly enjoying themselves. Occasionally, they would talk about their children. One would sigh about how a daughter can't be kept at home forever, and how it was heartbreaking to see her with some punk. The other would console him, then proudly mention how his own son was so promising, with a beautiful and sensible girlfriend. Chairman Sterling would scoff. Beautiful? How beautiful could she be? Not as beautiful as my precious daughter. But then he would remember that his precious daughter was about to be handed over to that punk kid, and he would be overcome with sorrow, taking a long drag from a cigarette. Robert Wallace, seeing his little brother's gloom, would console him. It's okay, little brother. Every father feels this way when his daughter gets married. If you're really angry, just give that punk kid a good talking to a few times. If you can't do it alone, I'll help you. Charles felt much better hearing that. He gave Robert a thumbs up. You're a true friend, big brother. For that, I'll have my driver buy you a new fishing rod too. A brand name one. Robert's eyes lit up, but he waved his hands modestly. I couldn't possibly. I can't take such a big gift from you. Then he asked curiously, Hey, you have a driver, little brother? Lately, the two old buddies have been spending a lot of time together. Their conversations were always casual, shooting the breeze about anything and everything. Neither of them had any intention of prying into the other's background. The chairman of Sterling Holdings, when he let his guard down, could be incredibly down-to-earth. He'd grab a stool, sit by the river with his newfound friend, and pass the afternoon smoking and cracking sunflower seeds. To Robert Wallace, there was nothing particularly extraordinary about his new pal. It wasn't until the man casually mentioned having a driver that Robert's perception shifted with a jolt of surprise. A driver, huh? If you got a driver, Robert said, you must be some kind of big shot, my friend. Charles Sterling just waved his hand dismissively. Hardly. I just run a small business. Earning a living, you know. Robert, completely unsuspecting, nodded with a look of understanding. I hear you. My wife just started her own business last year, he said, a note of pride creeping into his voice. It's been exhausting, but things are finally starting to look up. Then, as if remembering something, his expression darkened. But the business is just getting on its feet, and it looks like my son's future father-in-law is already eyeing the finances. If he's the accountant, Robert grumbled, then where does that leave me, the husband? Hearing his friend's indignant complaint, Charles Sterling, his new brother-in-arms, immediately took his side. You're absolutely right, my friend, he declared. It's your business, you and your wife. You can't just let some outsider come in and take advantage. I'm with you on this one. If that so-called in-law of yours really tries to pull something, I'll help you take him down. He even puffed out his chest, making a solemn vow. This display of loyalty touched Robert deeply. He clapped the chairman's shoulder forcefully. You're a true friend, he said. And when it's time for you to deal with that punk son-in-law of yours, you can count on me. I'll give it everything I've got. And just like that, the two middle-aged men formed a mutual assistance pact. They locked eyes, a look of profound, shared understanding passing between them. They sealed the deal with a firm high five. Say no more. Let's get him. Holding his phone, Leo suddenly sneezed. On the other end of the line, David Cheng's voice came through. Hello, you okay? Leo subconsciously rubbed his nose, a little puzzled. Feels like someone's talking about me. Who could it be? The only person who came to mind was his dear future father-in-law. Shaking his head, Leo refocused. I'm fine. Where were we? Go on. David Chung had called to discuss an important matter with Leo, the company's CSO. Happy Nest's registered user count had just surpassed 100 million. The company was now planning its next phase of expansion, solidifying its position as a social media platform while gradually branching into other ventures. Although they'd established Berkeley as their headquarters, they were considering opening branch offices in other cities. This would allow them to take advantage of local government incentives and resources and also help expand Happy Nest's social network, both online and offline. The company's senior management had already held a meeting on Monday to discuss it. For now, they had tentatively decided to open branches in 3 cities, one in the Southwest, one on the East Coast, and another in Portland. But that brought another challenge. They would need to hire more staff for the branches, lease office space, and build new teams. Every step required a massive amount of capital. As it stood, Happy Nest's available funds were running low. While Garden Grab had been a viral, phenomenon-level game, it wasn't designed for aggressive monetization. After the initial surge of peak spending, revenue had dropped off significantly. After all, not every virtual farmer was as rich and clueless as Isabella Zhao. Under these circumstances, there was only one simple, direct way to secure more funding: find investors. In fact, for the last 2 months, savvy venture capital firms and investors had seen Happy Nest's potential and were eager to get in on the action. Now that the user count had broken the 100 million mark, they were practically rabid. The checks they'd slapped down in front of David Chung were large enough to tempt anyone. Of course, their demands for equity and other rights were just as steep. No way, Leo said, his tone firm. Their terms are too low. Happy Nest is still on a steep upward trajectory. Anyone trying to buy in now is just looking to take a pound of flesh. Giving up equity is one thing, but letting it compromise the company's decision-making authority is fatal. David Chung sighed. I know what you mean, but they know we're burning through cash, and they're using it as leverage to make outrageous demands. The problem is, we really are short on money. If we don't take it from investors, where else are we going to get it? Leo raised an eyebrow and answered without hesitation. Short on money? I'll handle it. David was stunned. You? Then he understood and shook his head. Even if you put in the entire 2 million you got from Carl Carlson, it's not nearly enough to keep the fire going. Leo just laughed. Who said anything about that one? 2 million? I'm talking about the browser game I'm working on. David was skeptical. The browser game? That thing you bought the web novel rights for? Can that really make money? A slight smile played on Leo's lips. Of course. It's going to make a fortune. In early July, at Mako Entertainment, the art team, led by Isabella Zhao, had finalized the first draft of all the artwork for the Battle Through the Heavens browser game. They were now moving into the second phase of refinement and polishing. Meanwhile, Wyatt Way and his team of programming wizards from the Berkeley Game Dev Club were in the final stages of debugging the internal test version of the game. Leo and David had spoken on Tuesday. On Thursday evening, he received the official internal test version of the game from Wyatt. Friday morning, Leo called his best friend, Kevin Zhao. Go turn on your computer. Check the file I sent you. Kevin, who had just woken up, was still groggy. Check what? What is it? Leo grinned. Something good. You'll know when you see it. That same morning, Charles Sterling was also on the phone, his face beaming with good cheer. It's the good stuff. Absolutely top of the line, he exclaimed. You just wait, my friend. You'll see in a minute. He hung up the phone. The chairman of Sterling Holdings took the 2 brand-new, high-end fishing rods from his trusted subordinate. He inspected them and nodded in satisfaction. Then he looked at the tense, nervous former Special Forces soldier standing before him and sighed. Relax. What happened before? It wasn't entirely your fault. It couldn't have been easy for you, being stuck between me and Claire. So we'll let go. But don't let it happen again, you hear me? Hearing his boss's words, Mr. Zhou let out a long, heavy sigh of relief. He looked at the chairman with overwhelming gratitude. Don't worry, Mr. Sterling. I guarantee it will never happen again. He meant every word. After surviving the near-apocalyptic scene at the Concorde, the battle-hardened veteran felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He was so moved he was on the verge of tears. This is great. Finally, I don't have to be a double. No, a triple agent anymore. No more cover-ups. No more secrets. The legendary soldier could finally stand tall in the sunlight again, a proud man. The feeling of being able to tell the truth. It was glorious. Seeing his subordinate's relieved expression, Charles Sterling couldn't help but smile. He clapped his trusted right-hand man on the shoulder. All right, drive me to the Riverwalk. I'm delivering these fishing rods to my old buddy. Mister. Joe snapped to attention, full of vigor. Yes, sir. A short while later, by the riverwalk. The two friends met again, greeting each other warmly. The chairman turned to his subordinate. Mr. Joe, bring the gift over for my friend. And then, the former Special Forces soldier and a middle-aged man named Robert Wallace locked eyes. Robert froze for a second, his eyes widening in disbelief as he looked at the driver. The very instant Mr. Joe recognized Robert Wallace's face, he turned to stone. His pupils began to quake uncontrollably, as if the world were collapsing around him. Wait, what the? The men of the Wallace family weren't all slow on the uptake. Robert Wallace's reaction time was miles ahead of his disappointing son's. When he heard the name Mr. Joe, it merely sounded familiar. But the next second, when he got a clear look at his new friend's driver, Robert was stunned for a full second. Then his sharp, middle-aged mind rapidly connected all the dots. Mr. Joe was the driver for Claire's family. Mr. Joe was the driver for his new friend. Therefore, Claire and his new friend were family. Claire had a father. His new friend had a daughter. Therefore, Claire was his new friend's daughter. Using the most straightforward process of elimination, he quickly pieced together the truth. And along with it, two brand new, terrifying conclusions emerged. His new friend had a punk son-in-law he wanted to get rid of. That's my son. He had promised to help his new friend beat up the punk son-in-law. I'm going to beat up my own son. Even for a man like Robert Wallace, a seasoned workshop foreman who had seen it all, the world nearly went black. Oh, hell no. He had just gone out fishing, made a new friend, and somehow he was about to screw his own son over. While a tempest raged in Robert's mind, the former Special Forces soldier was experiencing a similar, world-shattering crisis. He, too, had recognized Robert's identity instantly. In a flash, the former recon soldier drew his own conclusion. The boss said he was delivering a gift to his new best friend, and his new best friend was his future son-in-law's father. The boss would never be this enthusiastic and generous toward his future son-in-law's father. Therefore, a scalp-tingling conclusion formed in Mr. Joe's mind. The boss didn't know who his future son-in-law's father was, but the two of them had already become sworn brothers. The veteran's vision darkened, and of all the goddamn things, I had to be the one to walk right into it. The atmosphere became thick and bizarre. To Charles Sterling, it just looked like his trusted subordinate was standing there, holding the fishing rods, frozen in place. He was just staring at his new friend, and his new friend was staring right back. The two of them, just wide-eyed and motionless, as if they were stuck. Charles was confused. Mr. Joe, Mr. Joe, what are you staring at? Hey, my friend, why are you frozen too? Robert and Mr. Joe snapped back to reality, instantly trying to appear calm and casual. Nothing, just zoned out for a second. Charles nodded, unconcerned, and then cracked a joke. The way you two were staring at each other, I would have thought you already knew each other, huh? He chuckled, amused by his own wit. Robert and Mr. Joe forced a composed smile. Haha, you're kidding. Mr. Sterling, what are the odds of that? As they spoke, the two conspirators exchanged a panicked glance before quickly looking away, their eyes silently screaming. Dear God, the odds are exactly that. Mr. Joe's mind was a tangled mess. He gritted his teeth, thinking he should just tell his boss the truth. But the next second, he saw Robert frantically signaling him with his eyes. The words died on the former soldier's lips. Charles didn't notice these subtle exchanges. He gestured for his man to hand the fishing rods over. As he passed them, Robert leaned in, his voice a low, urgent whisper. Cover for me. Keep this a secret for now. Mr. Joe was aghast. Mr. Wallace, I really can't do this job anymore. Before, I had no choice. Now, I want to be a good man. Robert's brow furrowed. Is that non-negotiable? Mr. Joe was resolute. Non-negotiable, Robert nodded. Thought for a moment. I seem to recall you were the one who drove Claire to our house all those times. That single sentence made the unflappable veteran's pupils nearly shatter. Robert glanced at Mr. Joe. Want to renegotiate? Mr. Joe swallowed. No need. I'll help. The sun was shining brightly. But for the former soldier, the world had just gone dark again. The two men quickly finalized their secret transaction. Charles, standing nearby, was curious. Hey, what are you two talking about? Does it really take this long to hand over a fishing rod? Robert took the rods with a sunny smile. Nothing at all. I was just thanking Mr. Joe. These are some fine rods. Mr. Joe squeezed out a smile of his own. Yes. You're too kind, sir. It's my pleasure, really. After getting the rods, Charles was about to invite his subordinate to sit with them and try his hand at fishing. But the veteran was in no mood for recreation. He forced another smile and told his boss, "You two go ahead. I just remembered I have an errand to run." Then he fled the dangerous scene as if his life depended on it. Watching his subordinate's hasty retreat, Charles was puzzled. That Mr. Joe, why is he sweating so much? Robert chimed in helpfully. It's summertime, probably just the heat. Charles accepted this explanation, then picked up his new rod with renewed vigor. All right, now I have a rod too. My friend, let's see who can catch more. That evening, Charles Sterling returned to his villa in Coral Court, carrying a bucket full of fish and feeling immensely pleased. He walked in and called out to his housekeeper with a laugh. Mrs. Foam, we're having a fish feast tonight. Plenty of ingredients. He proudly held up the bucket for her to see. Mrs. Foam came over, smiling warmly as she took it. Wonderful. Did you catch all of these today, Mr. Sterling? Charles waved his hand in high spirits. Not quite. I'm just a beginner. Only caught 2 today. The rest were a gift from a new friend I made. I told him not to, but he insisted. A real stand-up guy, that one. Meanwhile, at the Wallace residence, Robert Wallace came home humming a cheerful tune, fishing rod over his shoulder and bucket in hand. Susan Wallace came to greet him and peered curiously into the bucket. Then her face fell in disappointment. Skunked again? I don't know why you even bother sitting by that river all day. But Robert wore the cryptic expression of a wise master. You wouldn't understand. I'm laying the groundwork for our son. Leo, sitting on the living room sofa, eating watermelon, looked up in confusion. Huh? What's this got to do with me? Robert looked at his son and waved his hand magnanimously. Son, you just focus on your relationship with Claire. Don't you worry about a thing. Your old man will handle it. Then, chest puffed out, he strode proudly into his room. He left a bewildered mother and son staring at each other in the living room. What's gotten into your dad? Maybe it's menopause? Whether his old man was going through menopause or a second adolescence, Leo couldn't figure it out. But he did notice something else. Lately, whenever he went to the Sterling Villa in Coral Court to see Claire, he was running into his future father-in-law less and less. Even on the rare occasions he did see him, it was usually just as Leo was arriving and Charles was heading out, a cheerful spring in his step. They'd exchange a glance, but his father-in-law wouldn't glare at him with his usual cold hostility. Or maybe he just didn't have the time to be bothered. He'd give a simple nod and rush out the door, looking for all the world like a kid eagerly running off to play with his friends. Baffled, Leo entered the villa. When Claire came to greet him, he couldn't help but ask, "Is your dad having a midlife crisis romance or something?" Claire shrugged. No idea. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck, leaned in, and gave him a quick kiss, her eyes twinkling. But it's good for us, isn't it? No one to get in our way. It was true. For whatever reason, Charles Sterling's attention had been diverted, leaving the young couple free from any third-wheeling interference. They were basically back to living their own comfortable little life together. They would go out, maybe meet up with Kevin and Tessa for food and shopping. Or they'd drop by the Sweet Return Bakery branches, where Bertha Sue would assume her role as the bakery's young mistress, sternly training the staff. Or they'd just stay at the Sterling house. The two would go to the training room in the basement to practice their combat skills. A friendly spar, you fall, I fall. And before long, the falling would lead to rising temperatures and the sweet scent of a girl's sweat. Redacted for decency's sake. While the young couple's days were sweet and inseparable, a certain future father-in-law was also having the time of his life. It was truly blissful. For over a decade in the city, all his energy had been focused on the demanding work of running Sterling Holdings. This trip back to Northwood was a much-needed vacation, and he was rediscovering the long-lost feeling of relaxation. And he met a kindred spirit, a true friend. They were around the same age, had similar temperaments, and their friendship had nothing to do with business interests. They just clicked. They could talk for hours and have fun together. He was so much better than that punk son-in-law he'd been saddled with. More importantly, it wasn't just about chemistry. Charles discovered that his new friend was genuinely good to him. Besides lending him money for cigarettes the first time they met, whenever they went fishing, his buddy would insist on giving him more than half of his cash. He wouldn't take no for an answer. Later, it wasn't just fishing. His friend would invite him out to eat at local diners, always insisting on paying. He absolutely refused to let Charles pay or even split the bill. Charles felt that no one, aside from his late wife, had ever treated him this well. It was almost too good to be true. It got to the point where the chairman himself felt a little guilty. My friend, you really don't have to be so generous. I only gave you one fishing rod, and you've repaid me far too much. Robert Wallace waved his hand dismissively. Not at all, not at all. What you gave me was much more than just a fishing rod. Charles paused. Huh. Robert caught himself. Oh, it's nothing. Come on, let's keep drinking. Bottoms up. The clinking of glasses filled the small diner as the two friends drank merrily. One was filled with gratitude and admiration. The other was secretly plotting, eagerly plying his friend with more alcohol. That night, a pleasantly drunk Charles Sterling returned home. Claire, just out of the shower, was surprised to see her old man in such a state. "You been drinking? Who with?" Charles plopped down on the sofa and waved a hand at his daughter's question. "A friend. A new friend I made." Then he sighed with feeling. "He's such a good man." Over at the Wallace house, Leo had just helped his own tipsy father into the living room and handed him a cup of hot tea to sober up. "A new friend?" Leo asked. "Dad, who'd you meet while fishing this time?" Robert Wallace waved a dismissive hand, looking smug. "Son, your dad's got skills you don't even know about." Then he turned to look at Leo. "How are things with you and Claire lately?" Leo scratched his head. "Pretty good. Her dad's not around much these days, so we're basically just doing our own thing. It's been nice." Robert nodded in satisfaction and clapped his son firmly on the shoulder. "That's the spirit. You two keep at it. As long as I'm here, her dad is not a problem." His tone was confident and heroic. "Son, you fly free. Your old man will carry the weight for you." The slap nearly sent Leo stumbling. He looked at his father, even more confused than before. "Is Mr. Wallace really going through menopause?" Lately, Leo hadn't just been spending his days with his girlfriend. Wyatt Way had sent over the internal test version of the battle through the Heavens browser game. Leo immediately forwarded it to Kevin Zhao, asking him and his trusted college buddies to run a full playtest. 3 days passed without a word. When Kevin finally reappeared, Leo was shocked. He had dark circles under his eyes, looking like he hadn't slept in days. But his eyes were shining bright and intense. He grabbed Leo's arm and shook it excitedly. "It's incredible. Leo, this game is insane. It's going to be a massive hit." It wasn't just his personal opinion. Kevin also brought back feedback from his college friends. It was all 5-star reviews. They were hooked. For fans of the original Battle Through the Heavens novel, the immersion was total. Leveling up, fighting monsters, crafting pills, acquiring rare treasures, and heavenly flames. The only thing missing was a way to spend money. If the payment channels had been open, Kevin and many others would have happily thrown their living expenses into the game on the spot. And even for casual players who weren't fans of the novel, the game's rich elements and straightforward, satisfying grind provided an exhilarating experience. Leo had even played it for a bit with Claire. He was very satisfied. Only a few minor details and bugs needed to be ironed out. But the core framework was based on the templates he'd borrowed from the most successful browser games of his past life. It was all about one thing: satisfaction. The grind was satisfying, leveling up was satisfying, and the sense of accomplishment was off the charts. Even Claire, after trying the game, nodded in approval. "It's good, easy to pick up and play. Simple and direct." Leo smiled. "Exactly. For a browser game, simple and direct is what you want." He then sent the test version to Potato. After a quick playthrough, the author was full of praise and eagerly awaited the official launch. In return, Potato sent Leo a document. It was the draft of the upcoming chapters of Battle Through the Heavens. Leo opened it and took a look. He froze, then immediately sent a string of question marks to Potato in the AIM chat. "The Reasonable Twin Flames. What the hell is this?" The Reasonable Twin Flames. Full name: The Reasonable Twin Flames of Harmony. Discovered 1,000 years ago by a pair of Do-Zun-level lovers in a mysterious ancient land. They claimed it for their own. One fire, two flames, born as one. They complement each other perfectly when used by the owner and their partner in tandem. If their hearts are connected and their love is true, its power can be multiplied exponentially. This was the description from the manuscript Potato had sent Leo. According to the author's enthusiastic explanation, the protagonist, the impossibly lucky Xiao Yan, had only just heard rumors of this heavenly flame. In a future adventure, after overcoming great difficulties, he would conveniently and fortunately obtain it, adding another major boost to his power. Then, he could even share the flame with the other female protagonists in the novel. A bit of reasonable dual cultivation. "I was scrolling through your and your wife's joint account," Potato explained in the chat. "The PDA was so thick, it was sickeningly sweet. It gave me an idea, so I wrote you two in as a cameo. I can't be the only one suffering from this PDA. My readers have to get a taste too. So, what do you think, brother? Give me some feedback." After his explanation, Potato eagerly awaited Leo's thoughts. Leo typed back, "Reasonable." He honestly couldn't think of anything else to say. He never expected that, in this new life, before he'd accomplished any world-shaking feats, He would first make a cameo in the top web novel of the era. He and Bertha Sue were guest stars now. But snapping back to reality, Leo didn't forget to remind Potato of the important stuff. Forget about the heavenly flames for now. Just focus on writing the main plot. The game is about to launch, so you don't need to hold back on that plot climax anymore. It's time to unleash the big guns. Potato's reply came back, full of confidence and fighting spirit. Don't worry, my manuscript has been champing at the bit for ages. Mid-July, the Battle Through the Heavens browser game entered its second-to-last round of internal testing. Leo sent the test version to Happiness internal employee group chat, asking everyone to participate in one final round of testing. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. In fact, many Happiness employees got so addicted that they almost neglected their own work. As CEO, David Chung sternly criticized this behavior during a meeting. Then, he immediately called Leo with a completely different tone. "You magnificent bastard. How does your brain even work? This game is something else. I started playing in my office and got so hooked, the whole afternoon just flew by." David grew more excited as he spoke. More importantly, this game is practically built for microtransactions. The payment channels aren't even open yet, and I can already see dozens of money pits you've dug in there. If this thing takes off at launch, the speed at which it'll rake in cash will leave Garden Grab in the dust. To prove his sharp eye, David excitedly listed at least 7 or 8 monetization elements he had spotted in the game. Leo listened and nodded. You're right. But there are another 37 monetization points you missed." He then kindly explained his planned monetization strategy to David. He didn't even bother mentioning simple equipment and item upgrades. Just take pill crafting, for example. The ingredients could be bought with real money. The quality of the crafting furnace could be upgraded with real money. And you could even use premium currency to guarantee success, preventing your pills from being downgraded upon failure. And that wasn't even getting into the classic gacha system. 10 pulls, 30 pulls for rare, ultra-rare, and SSR characters. He laid it all out in dazzling detail. On the other end of the line, David was left utterly speechless. When he finally recovered, he took a sharp breath and said, "You're actually a demon, aren't you?" Leo patiently corrected him. "I'm just an ordinary, unassuming Mr. Zhou. Oh, wait, I mean Kevin Zhao. My mistake. The Happiness CSO was Mr. Zhou. The boss of Mako Entertainment was Kevin Zhao. When you have too many aliases, it's easy to get them mixed up." Speaking of which, he hadn't seen Mr. Zhou in a while. He wondered what he was up to. He kind of missed him. Shaking off the thought, Leo reminded David, "By the way, the game launches around the end of the month. The thing we talked about before, could you help me get done?" According to the plan Leo and David had already agreed on, Mako Entertainment and Happiness would form a partnership. Happiness would serve as the promotional platform, creating a dedicated section for browser games. They would leverage Happiness' massive user base to drive initial traffic to the Battle Through the Heavens game. The subsequent game revenue would be split between the two companies according to a set percentage. At the same time, Happiness would also lend some of its programming staff to provide technical and personnel support to Mako Entertainment in the early stages. Of course, Leo was paying for the servers himself. And if you're buying servers, you need a place to put them. So Leo decided to officially lease an office space for Mako Entertainment. Once the game became a hit, Mako Entertainment, as the developer, would need to become more professional. It was just a matter of spending a little money. With $2 million in hand, Leo Hammer Wallace was feeling flush. He could spend whatever he wanted. Leo had already asked David to help him find a place. Soon, they found a single-floor, open-plan space in a small building on Kongping Road, not far from Happiness headquarters. The environment was quiet and elegant. The interior was fresh and modern, and the space was more than enough for Mako Entertainment's current staff. Since Leo wasn't in the city, the task of inspecting the site and handling the move-in fell to Mako Entertainment's 2 department heads. Arriving on Kongping Road and stepping inside the building, Isabella Zhao looked around at the serene scenery outside the windows and the bright sunlight filtering through the dappled leaves. She was completely stunned. "Whoa, this is going to be our company's office. The boss is loaded." Before she arrived, Isabella had been grumbling about having to check out some office space. She'd spent the entire car ride muttering under her breath, complaining about the heartless capitalist boss who was exploiting his employees, not even letting them rest on the weekend. She would have rather been at home playing Garden Grab. But the moment she saw the place, her eyes lit up. All traces of the sophisticated it girl of the arts department vanished. She was like a country bumpkin in the big city, wandering around the room, letting out gasps of amazement. "Whoa, look at these floor-to-ceiling windows. Whoa, this office. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It even has its own private bathroom and a bathtub. Wyatt Way stood nearby, hands in his pockets, calmly looking around. He nodded. Not bad. The place is nice. Isabella nearly jumped. Nice? It's more than nice. This is heaven, okay? There is a beanbag chair on the floor, likely left behind by the previous tenants. Isabella plopped down into it, sinking into its soft embrace and rolling around happily. No need to look any further. This is it. I could work overtime here for the rest of my life. After rolling around for a bit, a worried look crossed her face. But a place this nice, isn't the rent going to be really expensive? Wyatt nodded in agreement. In this area, it's definitely not cheap. Isabella grew anxious. Can a boss afford it? I don't care. I'm not leaving. I'm working here. She hugged the beanbag chair tightly, refusing to let go. Wyatt didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Relax. The rent's already been paid. The boss just sent us here to give a final look and confirm everything. Isabella let out a sigh of relief, patting her chest. Oh, good, good. She flopped back onto the beanbag chair, sinking into it contentedly. After exploiting us for so long, the boss finally did something right. I hereby declare that my respect for him has increased by a tiny little bit. Wyatt wandered over to the window and looked out at the bustling street scene in the heart of the old city district. He mentally calculated the approximate rent for such a prime location and couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration. He really is impressive. When he first agreed to join Mako Entertainment, it was partly out of friendship with his benefactor bro and partly out of personal interest. But over time, the young heir of the Way family had come to see the full extent of his benefactor's abilities. Setting everything else aside, just being able to mastermind a game like Battle Through the Heavens was enough to earn his respect. From a professional standpoint, and with the business acumen he had developed growing up in the Way family, Wyatt could see the immense potential behind the game. It wasn't just about technical skill. It required a masterful, precise understanding of the market and user psychology. During their recent phone calls to report on their progress, he had been blown away by his benefactor's casual analysis of user psychology. The proud heir of the Way family, who had received a top-tier business education from a young age and was confident his skills surpassed 99% of his peers, felt like a complete rookie being lectured by him. Of course, even without the business savvy and unique vision, Wyatt would still be utterly devoted to his benefactor. After all, anyone who could tame a terrifying creature like Claire the Demoness deserved to be put on a pedestal. That was way more impressive than earning $100 million. With Mako Entertainment's office location settled, Happiness began to build hype for their upcoming joint browser game project. The original Battle Through the Heavens novel accelerated its release schedule, publishing 3 or even 4 chapters a day, hurtling towards its explosive climax. Everything was proceeding in a flurry of preparation. Time quietly slipped into late July. After spending more than 2 weeks in Northwood, Charles Sterling finally had to return to the city. There were many matters at Sterling Holdings that required his personal attention. Before he left, he made a point to have one last meal with his good friend. Over dinner, they drank and talked, reluctant to part ways. He never thought that, after 40, he would find such a kindred spirit. As they got drunker, an emotional Charles Sterling slammed his hand on the table and declared that if his daughter didn't already have that punk, and if his friend's son didn't already have a girlfriend, he would have love for them to become in-laws, cementing their bond. Across the table, Robert Wallace, who had also been feeling the effects of the alcohol, suddenly sobered up. He instantly materialized a pen and paper and slid it in front of his friend. You never know about these things, my friend. What if there's a chance? Here, why don't you write it down, just in case? Charles happily picked up the pen and signed his name with a flourish. Done. Absolutely. That night, a thoroughly buzzed Robert Wallace staggered home and banged on his son's bedroom door. Leo, who had been on the phone with Claire, opened the door with a confused look on his face. Robert slapped him hard on the shoulder, his voice full of triumph. Watch and learn, son. Your old man went in and sealed the deal. Leo just stared. Question mark. What deal? What did he seal? In that same late July, the results of the college applications were released. This year, Northwood High had a 67% acceptance rate to top-tier universities. 3 students got into Harvard and Yale, and a full 14 students, including those on wait lists, were successfully admitted to Berkeley, which meant 14 unlucky souls were headed to Berkeley. All thanks to the recruitment efforts of last year's honorary alumni, the Power Couple. As soon as the results were out, an overjoyed Northwood High immediately posted the honor roll, wanting to broadcast the news to the world. They also invited their outstanding alumni, Leo Hammer Wallace and Bertha Sue, back for a celebration. The school administration was beaming, their faces red with excitement. They came over to Leo and Claire, clapping them warmly on the shoulders. You'll have 14 new freshmen from Northwood at Berkeley with you. You need to share your experience as upperclassmen with them. Leo, Claire, share their experience? As in, teach them how to survive their next 4 years at Berkeley? The couple exchanged a helpless glance. They looked over at the dozen or so freshmen who were staring at them with wide, innocent, and expectant eyes. Claire whispered to her boyfriend, "What do we do?" Leo thought for a moment, his eyes lighting up. "I've got it." 10 minutes later, Leo had dragged the entire group of freshmen to a LAN center. Sitting in front of the computers, the newly admitted Berkeley students were utterly bewildered. Sir, I thought we were going to share our college experiences. Why are we playing games?" Leo waved a hand, his voice righteous. "College is a game. Here, I'm sending you all a link to an internal test. Try it out and tell me what you think." A group of top students. Perfect for beta testing. Free labor was not to be wasted. Claire stood beside him, exasperated, and lightly smacked her boyfriend. "You're worse than a slave driver." The freshmen received their test accounts for the Battle Through the Heavens browser game. At first, they grumbled. "Sir, we don't really like playing games. And this name is weird. What's Battle Through the Heavens?" 10 minutes later, their eyes were glued to the screens, furiously clicking their mice and keyboards, completely immersed. "Kill, kill, 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 kill. I'm already at level 7 do, G, chi. Ha ha ha. 30 years east, 30 years west. You want to annul the engagement, Nalan Yinran? You just wait." Well, that was a quick change of tune. At the end of July, to the feverish anticipation of millions of fans, the Battle Through the Heavens novel reached its most classic climax. The 3-year agreement. The protagonist stormed the Misty Cloud sect. On that very same day, in the real world, the Battle Through the Heavens browser game, produced by Mako Entertainment and jointly released with Happy Nest, went live. And, along with the novel's climax, it took the internet by storm. In the summer of 2008, 2 keywords dominated the American internet. The first was the Beijing Olympics. Set to be held in August at the Bird's Nest Stadium, the event was the most anticipated spectacle of the year for countless people worldwide. The second, however, was completely unexpected. It was the title of a web serial, and the name of its browser game adaptation. Battle Through the Heavens. At the end of July, as the novel reached its climax, the 3-year agreement with Nalan Yinran, the protagonist's assault on the Misty Cloud sect, countless fans were left breathless and exhilarated. The perfectly timed launch of the browser game, heavily promoted by Happy Nest and recommended by the author, Potato, at the end of his chapters, instantly generated explosive hype. On the first day of its launch, hundreds of thousands of players flooded the registration servers, nearly causing a system-wide crash. Fortunately, Mako Entertainment and Happy Nest had prepared for the onslaught, quickly adding more servers and maintenance staff to stabilize the situation just in the nick of time. Then, as players logged into the game, they were stunned by the vibrant, diverse, and dazzling world of Battle Through the Heavens. First, they were captivated by the vivid, handsome, and beautiful character designs, especially the female characters from the novel who were brought to life before their eyes. Some were ethereal and otherworldly, some were fresh and bright, others were alluring and seductive. To put it more bluntly, damn those legs, damn those assets. The gorgeous character art alone was enough to get fans and players fired up and ready to stand at attention. And that was before they even started playing. Once they did, everyone was completely won over by the rich and varied systems of abilities and items. The visuals missing from the text were now perfectly realized. This is the Battle Through the Heavens game I've always wanted. When not just 1 or 2, but thousands of fans and players voiced this sentiment, the popularity and metrics of the browser game began to skyrocket at a rate that stunned the entire industry. Even though they opened 100 servers on the first day, it was barely enough to contain the flood of new registrations. Day 1, the game's revenue broke $800,000. Day 2, daily revenue surpassed the $1 million mark. While the novel's protagonist, Xiao Yin, was dishing out righteous vengeance at the Misty Cloud sect, the browser game was shattering industry records in the real world. On the third day, daily revenue peaked at $48 million. This was 2008, and this was just a simple browser game, made with a budget that was a fraction of what major MMOs cost. To achieve such results was like the rise of the novel's protagonist himself, an underdog defying fate. Even by normal standards, after the initial 3-day explosion, revenue was expected to decline and stabilize. But even the most conservative estimates predicted that the average daily revenue would not fall below $600,000. In other words, every month, David Chung calculated, his voice filled with awe as he spoke to Leo on the phone, it can bring in a stable income of nearly $20 million. He couldn't help but let out a curse. Holy shit, how is it that when you do it, making money looks so easy? Leo just laughed. Just wait and see. This game still has a lot of gas left in the tank. As a reborn person, he knew all too well how frighteningly long the life cycle of the Battle Through the Heavens IP was. This was just the beginning. Once it was promoted on mobile reading platforms, and the novel truly took off, gaining tens of millions of fans, even if only 1 in 30 or 1 in 50 of those readers became players, the game's revenue would climb to a whole new level. With money rolling in, the first order of business was to expand Mako Entertainment staff. With such a massive player base, the original team from the Berkeley Game Dev Club, led by Wyatt, was already stretched thin. They couldn't keep relying on Happiness programming department for help. They needed to build their own team. Leo didn't have to worry about that. A quick call to David, and Happiness HR department would handle the talent search. Next, it was time to reward the original team. They had been working overtime for months and were exhausted. Profit sharing would come later, but bonuses could be handed out now. Everyone on the programming and art teams got one. As for the 2 department heads, Leo certainly didn't forget them. And besides bonuses, Wyatt and Isabella each received a special, custom-made gift from the boss. A rescue card? Wyatt was looking at an e-card he'd just received via email, completely bewildered. Bro, he said over the phone, what is this? Leo kindly explained. With this card, the next time Claire decides she's going to kill you, you can call me for help one time. I'll do my best to save your life. Once. Wyatt was stunned. Then, his eyes widened in a violent tremor. Bro, I don't want the bonus. Can you give me 2 more of these rescue cards instead? This is very important to me. As for Isabella Zhao, her reward was simpler. Just receiving a 5-figure bonus was enough to make her feel like she was dreaming. She rubbed her eyes over and over, confirming that the new numbers in her bank account were real. Then, she launched into a torrent of praise for her boss over the phone, singing his virtues to the heavens. She used every complimentary word she could think of. Then she heard Leo's cheerful voice on the other end. Don't get too excited. There's one more gift. Open up your Garden Grab account. Isabella froze. She skeptically opened her game page. When she saw an item called Emperor-grade fertilizer, glowing with a brilliant golden light, sitting quietly in her inventory, she was stunned silent for a full minute. Leo, on the other end, thought the call had dropped. Hello? Hello? Are you there? After a long pause, a shriek of pure, unadulterated joy erupted from the phone. Then came Isabella's voice, pounding her chest and swearing an oath to the heavens. Boss, don't you worry. I, Isabella Zhao, swear that from this day forward, for generations to come, I will go through fire and water for Mako Entertainment. I will not hesitate. 1 bag of fertilizer in exchange for the loyalty of a 9 out of 10 arts department girl. That title felt like it could be a novel of its own. The Battle Through the Heavens browser game ignited a new wave of gaming fever across the nation that summer. Strictly speaking, a simple browser game with a creative team composed mainly of 2 small groups of university students shouldn't have been able to generate such astonishing hype. The revenue it was pulling in was comparable to that of major, popular MMOs. But there were 3 crucial, unreplicable factors behind its success. First, a certain reborn individual had simply summarized and replicated the most successful browser game templates from his past life, leaving all existing competitors in the dust. Second, the IP chosen for the game was a web novel masterpiece that had become scorching hot that summer. It just so happened to reach a major plot climax at the same time, generating a promotional effect that other game companies would have had to spend millions on marketing to achieve. Third, it was backed by Happiness, a platform that had itself become an unstoppable force in the first half of the year. Funneling even a small fraction of Happiness' 100 million-plus users into the game was enough to make any competitor green with envy. The combination of these 3 factors resulted in a phenomenal hit game with a monthly revenue of $20 million. It also allowed a certain Leo Hammer Wallace to finally take the first stable, successful step in his entrepreneurial journey after his rebirth. Not counting Happiness or the $2 million in Weibo equity he got from selling the domain to Nexus, Leo Wallace had now officially become a multi-millionaire in his own right. What was it like to be a multi-millionaire? For Leo, daily life didn't seem to change much. He came home and sprawled on the living room sofa. Susan Wallace, your esteemed son is hungry. Whip something up. Minimum of a royal feast. From the master bedroom came his mother's exasperated reply. A royal feast? You look like a royal feast. Your mother has to go inspect the new bakery branches. I don't have time for you. A moment later, Susan Wallace came rushing out of the room, ready to leave. There are some leftovers in the fridge. If you're hungry, heat them up yourself. And with that, she was gone, without so much as a second glance at her son. Attempted power move, failed. Undeterred, Leo turned to his father. Dad, your esteemed son, who earns tens of millions a month, is hungry, and your wife told him to eat leftovers. His father emerged from his room, carrying his fishing rod and a bucket. He heard his son's complaint and paused, looking Leo up and down. You must be really hungry, huh? Talking about earning tens of millions. You're starting to hallucinate. Then he clapped his son on the shoulder, full of fatherly love. Don't worry, just hang in there a little longer. Your old man will go catch you a few big fish. With that bold proclamation, Robert Wallace also headed out the door, leaving Leo standing alone once again, considering his father's fishing skills. Heating up the leftovers seemed like the more reliable option. Attempted power move failed again. That approach didn't seem to work on his parents. When Claire came over, he decided to try on his girlfriend. Bertha Sue, your esteemed multimillionaire boyfriend, is hungry. Unlike his parents, Bertha Sue took her boyfriend's request very seriously. Her eyes lit up, and she said without hesitation, "Then I'll cook." Before the words were even out of her mouth, a horrified Leo quickly stopped her. Wait a minute. I was just kidding. I'm not actually hungry. The multimillionaire had a near-death experience. While Claire wasn't a huge fan of online games, she was very interested in her boyfriend's business ventures. She knew that the Battle Through the Heavens game his company had made was causing quite a stir online. She also noticed a key detail. Your game is partnered with Happy Nest? Mako Entertainment had achieved success, but for now, Leo planned to keep his identity as the Happy Nest CSO a secret from his girlfriend. He was saving it for a bigger surprise later. So, in response to her curious question, he just smiled and gave a casual explanation. Yeah, they thought the game was good, so they agreed to partner with us. We get to use their popularity, and they get a cut of our revenue. It's mutually beneficial. Claire nodded, accepting the explanation. Then she asked another question. When you were negotiating the partnership, did you ever meet their CSO? Claire was still very curious about the mysterious chief strategy officer of Happy Nest. There was an inexplicable air of mystery around the person. Their style of doing things felt strangely familiar to her. Leo, however, answered without batting an eye. No, the guy's pretty mysterious. I just heard his last name is Zhou. The conversation about the Happy Nest CSO was brief and quickly forgotten. Leo leaned back comfortably on the sofa. Anyway, your husband's little business venture has been a modest success. I guess you could call me a multimillionaire now. So, Bertha Sue, do you have anything to say to your ultimate eligible bachelor boyfriend? He casually crossed his legs, ready to soak in his girlfriend's praise. But Claire paused, thought for a moment, and looked at him. Are you tired? Leo froze. He hadn't been expecting that. Not praise, but a question. And yet, those three simple words somehow struck a soft spot in his heart, making it tremble. He shook his head and laughed, trying to sound carefree. What's there to be tired about? You're not very good at this, Bertha Sue. This is the part where you're supposed to say how amazing your boyfriend is. It was a joke, but Claire didn't laugh. She just nodded. Yes, you are amazing. She leaned forward and gave him a gentle kiss on the lips, then pulled back slightly. They were inches apart. She looked into his eyes and said softly, but it must have been very hard. I don't want you to work so hard. It makes my heart ache. It takes a lot of effort to make things look effortless. No success is achieved without sweat and hard work. The easy smiles and casual conversations, the time spent with his girlfriend, all of it masked the late nights spent at home, poring over project plans. Even with a capable team, he still had to personally oversee every detail to perfection. It wasn't for the title of millionaire or for the money. It was to give the woman he loved a sense of security. These were things Leo would never tell Claire. And Claire would never ask. She wouldn't ask, but she knew. She saw it all quietly, silently. Until this moment, when she saw his efforts pay off, she could finally, carefully ask those three words. Some people only care how high you fly, but there are others who worry if you're tired from flying. The former are a dime a dozen, flocking to you when you're famous. The latter are 1 in a million. To find even one is the blessing of a lifetime. Meeting his girlfriend's gaze, a warmth spread through Leo's heart. He smiled. I'm not tired. As long as I have you, I'll never be tired. He leaned down and kissed her soft lips. Claire kissed him back, a gentle response. The embrace on the sofa grew more passionate until desire took over. In a daze, Leo swept her into his arms and started towards the bedroom. Suddenly realizing what was happening, she started to struggle. Wait, your parents. Leo didn't stop. Dad's out fishing, Mom's at the bakery. We have at least 2 hours. Let's not waste them. He kissed her again. She paused, thought for a moment, then stopped struggling and kissed him back. Reasonable. A sweltering heat hung in the air. Time had silently slipped into August. The Battle Through the Heavens browser game had been online for nearly a week. Over the weekend, its daily revenue had hit a new high, reaching a record of $193 million in a single day. Apparently, a number of whales have been trying to pull the hidden skin for the S-Class character, Shao Suner, dropping cash on dozens of 30 pulls. They ended up maxing out the pity system and just buying it directly from the store with a lucky crystal. The hidden skin was gorgeous. But damn, the game designer was a real piece of work. On the forums and on Happiness's own discussion boards for the game, players praised the art team's skill while simultaneously sending their kindest regards to the scummy designer. Rumor had it the designer was the boss of the company that made the game. What was his name again? Kevin Zhao. Damn it. Screw you, Kevin Zhao. Grumbling aside, players continue to spend money and grind away without hesitation. After all, spending a little money and time on a game was no big deal, as long as the quality was there. As a result, the game's daily revenue continued to climb. The initial estimate of $600,000 had now risen to nearly $800,000. With a little more effort, a monthly revenue of over $30 million seemed within reach. The explosive success of the game was also a huge boon for Happiness. The revenue-sharing agreement David and Leo had made provided the company with a stable source of funding. The game's popularity had even drawn a whole new user base of gamers to Happiness. By the end of July, the site's registered user count had surpassed 110 million. It was now on the verge of catching up to and even surpassing social media giants like Nexus and the Quad. In terms of active users, it had shot to the #1 spot in the country at the end of July. The fledgling giant was beginning to show its teeth. Happiness had become a hallowed ground for countless young people and recent college graduates. It was legendary. In just a few short months, it had grown from nothing to a platform with over 100 million users. Every game it developed was a massive hit, without a single failure. All of it was thanks to the masterful guidance of the CEO and CTO. Working for two such bosses, being a part of that journey, felt like a chance to witness the birth of an internet legend and reap the benefits. And so, resumes poured in like snowflakes, nearly overwhelming Happiness' HR department. They had to temporarily reassign staff from other departments to help, working overtime to screen applicants, using standards that were 1 in 100 or even 1 in 1,000 to recruit new talent. The more they screened, the higher their standards became. Even for the front desk receptionist, the requirements were sky high. Top-tier looks, charisma, and etiquette were all mandatory. The company's image could not be compromised. And if it meant the male employees had some eye candy, well, that was just a bonus. This requirement passed with a unanimous vote from all the male staff. One bold employee even suggested, why don't we just use the CSO's girlfriend as the standard? The suggestion was immediately met with a beatdown from his colleagues. The CSO's wife as the standard? How many drinks have you had? Why don't you just ask for the moon while you're at it? If we use her as the standard, are we ever going to hire a receptionist? Happiness recruitment drive was in full swing. They also didn't forget to help their CSO screen some candidates for Mako Entertainment. At the end of the month, Mako Entertainment officially moved into their new office on the second floor of the building on Kongping Road, not far from Happiness headquarters. After the game launch, the work for Mako Entertainment's employees had mostly wrapped up. The art team, in particular, was given a paid vacation by Leo. Isabella Zhao, on summer break, still came to the office every day. She picked a desk with the best view by the window, where she would sketch and enjoy the scenery. It was incredibly relaxing. When she got tired of drawing, she'd drag the beanbag chair over to the floor-to-ceiling window and bask in the sun for the afternoon. Afterward, she'd get back to work, cheerful and tireless. There is nothing in the world more blissful than working like this, she declared. Wyatt couldn't help but retort, wouldn't not working be even more blissful? Isabella was momentarily speechless, then she shot Wyatt an annoyed look. People who get paid to not work have no right to speak. Now it was Wyatt's turn to be speechless. Having successfully landed a counterattack, Isabella contentedly cracked a sunflower seed between her teeth, then looked at Wyatt curiously. My family's here in the city, so it's easy for me to come to the office. Are you from around here too? Why you still come in every day during the break? Don't you have to go home? The programming team didn't have much to do lately either. The daily maintenance was easily handled by the members of the game dev club, with help from Happy Nest staff. As the head of the programming team, Wyatt really didn't need to come in every day. The question seemed to catch him off guard. He shook his head. My family's not from here. As he spoke, a self-deprecating look crossed the face of the heir of the Wave family. Compared to going home, I guess I find it more interesting to be at the office. Isabella just said, oh. She didn't quite understand, but she had the good sense not to press the issue. Instead, she offered a piece of well-meaning advice. You don't have much work to do right now, and you worked so hard before. You should take a good rest. I like coming here to sunbathe. That's why I come in. You can come too if you like, but don't use the company as a place to hide. Wyatt was taken aback. He looked up at Isabella, studying her as if for the first time. Then he said, you can actually say something that smart? That almost made Isabella jump up and give him a shoulder throw. What's wrong with my brain? I'm super smart. Annoyed but not defeated, she shot him a sideways glance and finished her advice. Everyone has bad days. If you're in a bad mood, just do something that makes you happy. Wyatt waved a hand dismissively. Yeah, I know. You stay here, I'm heading out. He turned to leave, but just as he reached the door, he stopped. He glanced back at Isabella on the beanbag chair, raised an eyebrow, and smiled. Thanks. Isabella waved back at him with an air of mature wisdom. Go on, get out of here. She watched him leave. The moment he was gone, she leaped up from the beanbag chair, celebrating her victory. Yes, the evil Isabella plan continues. I got rid of Wyatt. Now, I'm the most dedicated person in the whole company. Working overtime, even on vacation. Who can compete with me? The boss's #1 favorite employee can only be me. Mwaha. Life isn't a novel. It's not always full of dramatic twists and turns. The ordinary is the norm. Early August. The summer sun was brilliant and scorching. The heat shimmered in the air, blurring the lines of sight. The sun baked the earth, and everything felt languid and lazy. Every day was peaceful and quiet. Isabella Zhao still went to the office on Kongping Road every day, enjoying the air conditioning while she sketched and sunbathed. Occasionally, she would assert her authority as team lead over her members, satisfying her little ego. Wyatt Wei no longer spent all his time at the office with nothing to do. He started going out more, even if it was just aimlessly wandering the city streets to clear his head. Sometimes, when he did stop by the office, Isabella would shoo him away like a fly. Hey, don't hang around here if you have nothing to do. Go find something fun to do. How about the fort held down? Pushed out the door, a dazed Wyatt would finally realize what was happening. Wait a minute. I feel like you're trying to get rid of me. Isabella, looking slightly guilty but puffing out her chest, would declare, of course not. I'm doing this for your own good. I have absolutely no ulterior motives. In Northwood, business at the Sweet Return Bakery was still booming. After some personal guidance from the young mistress of the business, the pretty shop girl's service attitude and professional skills had improved dramatically. The new uniform, a pink dress with dark stockings and small heels, caused a sensation in the small town on its debut, with countless male customers flooding the store. Nothing suspicious, of course. They just suddenly developed a craving for bread and pastries. The reasonable couple continued to enjoy their comfortable summer vacation. They'd stay at the Wallace house for a few days, then head over to the Sterling Villa for a while. Without a certain future father-in-law to interfere, their life was sweet and blissful. And someone's bliss was thanks to someone else's burden. For the happiness of his son and future daughter-in-law, Robert Wallace had selflessly shouldered the heavy responsibility. Although the chairman of Sterling Holdings had returned to the city to work, he hadn't forgotten about his precious daughter and her punk boyfriend. With him gone, and his trusted subordinate Mr. Zhou on sick leave again, the chairman entrusted this important supervisory role to his most trusted friend. My friend, if you have time, could you keep an eye on my precious daughter and that punk for me? You don't have to do much. Just when you're passing by Coral Court on your way to the river, take a look at the second building. See if that kid is there and let me know. That was the earnest request from the chairman over the phone. On the other end, Robert Wallace slapped his chest and declared without a second thought, your business is my business. Your daughter is my daughter. You can count on me. The chairman hung up, deeply moved. See? This friend is truly reliable. Robert Wallace hung up with a wide grin. See? Talk about letting the fox guard the henhouse. This guy is so easy to fool. He turned and saw his son coming out of his bedroom. Hey son, isn't the Star Festival coming up in a couple of days? Do you and Claire have any plans? Leo was taken aback. Oh, we haven't really thought about it yet. The next second, his father waved his hand magnanimously. Plan whatever you want. Go all out. Your old man will be on lookout for you. Then he proudly strode out of the house with his fishing rod and bucket, leaving Leo standing there, completely bewildered. A cloud of question marks floated above his head. Mr. Wallace has been getting stranger and stranger lately. Maybe you should see a doctor? He mentioned it to his girlfriend on the phone, and she laughed. The older they get, the more they act like kids, she commented. The conversation then turned to the upcoming Star Festival. Her voice on the phone was soft and sweet. Leo, this is our second Star Festival together. The thought stirred something in Leo. He sighed. In the blink of an eye, a whole year has passed. If life were a novel, in the year between two Star Festivals, at least 456 chapters of plot had unfolded. So much had happened, so much they had been through. It almost felt unreal. A year had passed, and everything had changed. Leo, what are the plans for this year's Star Festival? Claire's voice came through, filled with laughter. Are we allowed to hold hands? Last year, during the festival on the Berkeley campus, they had pretended to be a couple for a day. Even just holding hands had been a heart-pounding, blush-inducing affair. This year, there was no need to pretend. An old married couple celebrating a holiday. Open and above board. Perfectly reasonable. Leo waved an imaginary hand. Yes, absolutely. Borrowing a line from his father, he added, plan whatever you want. Go all out. While some were happily planning their holiday, others were dreading its approach. For example, the Quad, Happiness #1 competitor. When Happiness' new joint venture, the Battle Through the Heavens browser game, went live and once again dominated the internet, reaping both traffic and revenue. It was like holding the Quad senior management over a fire. They couldn't sit still any longer. After some thorough investigation, they finally uncovered a few clues. They discovered that the game's developer, Mako Entertainment, had a very close relationship with Happiness. Given that most of Happiness' previous games were rumored to have been the work of their CSO, and this new game was also said to be a joint effort between the mysterious Mr. Zhou and Mako Entertainment, it stood to reason that this CSO and Mako Entertainment's low-key boss, Mr. Zhao, were also well acquainted. It was difficult to infiltrate Happiness, but if they could get inside Mako Entertainment and find out who this Mr. Zhao was, they could follow the trail and finally uncover the true identity of Happiness' mysterious CSO. This difficult mission, after much deliberation by the Quad senior management, was assigned to their most trusted operative. You're going this time. The objective is to first infiltrate Mako Entertainment. We hear that everyone there, from the employees to the boss, is quite young, mostly college students. Your job is to befriend them and get close to the boss, Mr. Zhao. From there, you can find out more about the Happiness CSO. At the very least, if you can win over the Mako Entertainment boss and get him to transfer the game's partnership to us, that would also be a major victory. In the Quad's headquarters in Portland, the voices of the company's top executives echoed around the long conference table. Finally, all eyes turned to the elegant figure sitting at the other end. Can you handle this mission? Feeling the weight of their gazes, the star of the Quad's Portland marketing department, the 23-year-old Serafina Vance, smoothed down her long, wavy hair. A proud, confident smile graced her beautiful face. She rose gracefully and gave a small, elegant bow to her superiors. Gentlemen, please rest assured. I guarantee it will be a piece of cake. A certain Leo Hammer Wallace was still unaware that he was being targeted, and not just one of his aliases, but two, and that the plan was to get close to the first alias in order to get an introduction to the second. It was a bit abstract and ridiculous, but that's what happens when you have too many identities. For now, he didn't have to worry about such trivial matters. 2 days before the Star Festival, Leo was at a land center with the original owner of his #1 alias, Kevin Zhao. The purpose wasn't just to play games, but to do a bit of market research. He wanted to see how the Battle Through the Heavens browser game, now a week after its launch, was being received in the small-town land center scene. The answer was, very well. In his past life, in 2008, the screens in a land center would have been dominated by Counter-Strike, WoW, MapleStory, or maybe some rhythm games. The sound of keyboards being furiously mashed would have been deafening. Occasionally, you'd see someone reading a web novel or watching educational videos, but that was about it. In this life, however, as he and Kevin walked through a Northwood Land Center, while most screens still showed those same games, nearly a fifth of the customers were playing Battle Through the Heavens. That was astonishing. A browser game was almost as popular as major client-based games. Of course, there was a trick to it. The biggest advantage of a browser game was that you could play it while doing other things. You could even be playing another game and have Battle Through the Heavens running in the background, grinding away. Any decent computer could handle it without a problem. No lag at all. So, Leo explained, the game doesn't directly compete with the top client-based games on the market. All the players of those other games can also be our audience. Kevin nodded in agreement. Reasonable. That's how browser games are. When I was testing other games for you, I'd have one running in the background while I was watching. While I was watching movies to learn some English words. He almost let it slip, and he coughed awkwardly to cover it up. Leo shot his friend a disdainful look. English words, my ass. You were studying Japanese, weren't you? The two chatted casually as they walked through the land center, glancing at the screens of the players. Most were grinding, collecting materials and spirit stones to craft pills and improve their cultivation. It was the classic browser game loop, but Battle Through the Heavens had refined it to be more satisfying, with more instant gratification. And with the IP of the novel, it was far more immersive. Besides the grinders, there were also the whales. They didn't have the patience to grind for materials. They just bought buffs with real money to speed things up. Don't bully the young and poor. Buddy, I'm not poor. Then there were the ones who would do 10 pulls and 30 pulls just to get a limited edition Shao Sunur skin or the Medusa super plus size model. Kevin was flabbergasted. Whoa, these guys really know how to spend. I thought only games like WoW had whales. Leo laughed. As long as the game is good, there will always be players willing to spend money. Browser games were just a quick way to make cash. If the time was right, maybe in another 10 years or so, he could convince some guy named Yang to make a game called Black Myth, Wukong. Oh, right. And that one called Genshin. Kevin had no idea what grand plans were brewing in his friend's mind. But after seeing the game's popularity firsthand, he was filled with awe. He turned to Leo. Leo, the game's such a hit now. You must be a millionaire, right? Leo waved a hand modestly. Just a little something, a little something. Compared to a certain Bertha Sue, who was set to inherit Sterling Holdings, it really was just pocket change. Kevin hesitated for a moment, then said, There's something I was hoping you could help me with. Leo paused, then a thought struck him. What? You need to borrow money? What happened? How much do you need? What for? Wait, don't tell me you and Tessa didn't use protection. You fool. Safety first. Kevin stared at him, dumbfounded. Then he got angry. What are you even talking about? I don't need to borrow money. He looked embarrassed. I was just wondering if your company is hiring. If maybe I could join and work with you. Fearing Leo would misunderstand, he quickly added, I don't need a salary at first. I just want to learn. I just feel like you're already running a big business, and I'm still just goofing around in college. It's not right. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, so school might not be the path for me. But I don't want people to look down on me, and I want to be able to give my wife a good life in the future. When she talks about me, her boyfriend, I want her to be proud. She's such a beautiful, smart girl. She deserves better than to be let down by me. This was the first time Leo had ever seen his best friend so serious. No, the second time. The last time was right before their final exams, when he was desperately trying to get into a university in the same city as Tessa. But this time it was different, more serious, more solemn. An 18-year-old boy, in front of his closest friend, bearing his flaws and insecurities, swallowing his pride to ask for a chance. It could only mean one thing. In his mind, his so-called male pride and ego were nothing compared to the happiness and future of the girl he wanted to spend his life with. Looking at his friend's earnest expression, Leo's gaze softened. He clapped Kevin on the shoulder. Don't worry. If I have a bite to eat, you'll have a pot to carry. Kevin's face lit up. That's great. Thanks, Leo. Wait, what? He blinked, the words finally registering. Leo caught himself. Oh, slip of the tongue, slip of the tongue. Of course, he could grant his friend's small request. In fact, he'd already had a plan in mind when he'd asked Kevin to help test other browser games. Now that Battle Through the Heavens was a success, whether it was for future updates or new game projects, the company would need new teams. He and Kevin immediately discussed a plan. After the summer break, Kevin would go back to Portland and set up a market research department, which would also serve as Mako Entertainment's Portland branch. It would provide continuous market analysis for future projects. The department head, of course, would be Kevin Zhao. Kevin was overjoyed. He promised he would work hard and not let Leo down. He would prove himself to the rest of the company. Leo nodded and added kindly, Don't feel too much pressure. Your name is already pretty legendary around the company. Kevin? Question mark. After the serious talk, the two friends went back to their usual joking selves. Since they were the land center, they decided to get a couple of computers and play for a while. Just as they were logging in, Claire and Tessa showed up. The two girls had just finished shopping and had come to find their boyfriends. Their arrival caused a stir in the land center. Countless patrons were stunned by their beauty. Then, when they saw the two girls walk over to Leo and Kevin, the room filled with envy, jealousy, and despair. Holy crap, do you have to bring your love life to a LAN center? Is there no safe space for single people anymore? The girls, oblivious to the stares, saw that their boyfriends had just logged on. Weren't you guys here all morning? Why are you just starting now? Kevin grinned obsequiously at Tessa. It's fine, honey. Leo and I were just chatting. Claire's eyebrow arched. Chatting? About what? Leo answered casually, nothing much. Kevin was just saying how he watches educational films to study Japanese. Kevin froze. Wait, Leo. Honey, you have to listen to me. I can explain. I didn't now. Honey, have mercy. Tessa had already grabbed her boyfriend's ear. Mercy? It's too late for that.